Melissa Parks? Present. Larry Germain? Present. All right, we're all here. Thank you. I would ask everyone to join us in the pledge to the flag. Can you hear us okay, Travis? You can hear us okay? That's good. All right, good. So welcome everybody to the meeting. At this point, we do have an opportunity for public comment related to agenda items on our agenda tonight. And if you'd like to address the board, please stand, come to the podium, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anyone? No one? All right. Nope. Got one?
Regarding games?
It has to be on the agenda, so yes.
That's what I came for. My name is Patty Hackler. What else did you need from me? Any other information? Sorry, here to talk about games, obviously. Okay. The last time there was discussion about games, the board decided not to close the building and stated they hope to see enrollment improve over time. The Swartz Creek School Board has done nothing to foster a positive change out at Gaines Elementary since that vote 6 years ago. There was not a single action that was taken to promote the school, and the decision was made to table all discussion for the next several years. Suddenly, we find ourselves here, rushing to decide the future of our building in the middle of the same school year in which we finally started a conversation in which we can improve it. We brought the community together for the first time in years to work on a plan that would encourage the growth of our school, and then you have turned around and not given us the adequate time to implement any changes, mark it for the next school year, or see what enrollment during a more normal school year will look like. You cannot make an educated decision on the future of games when we are currently still feeling the effects of the pandemic and the loss of students due to circumstances that are out of our control. It would be a great disservice to our community to eliminate a K-5 building without knowing what fall will bring. If you were truly concerned with the loss of students to Gaines and to the district as a whole, you would keep Gaines alive. A decision to close our doors would mean you will never see the return of the students who left during COVID, whether it be due to the masking or homeschooling. There is no way you will see them re-enroll their children just to have them bused to Deke and shuttled to Cyrene. These students will never return to Swartz Creek. If the Gaines community no longer has a local school to offer their population, this will absolutely discourage any new families from moving into the area and devastate the local businesses. If you attempt to shuttle our children long distances when we have other options at our immediate disposal, I guarantee you this will expedite the loss of Swartz Creek students, and the negative impacts of this will be greater with time. It has been stated that there could be a potential $250,000 savings if Gaines was no longer utilized as a K-5 building. This is the equivalent of the loss of 30 students. After talking to the community over the last several weeks, I wholeheartedly believe the decision to close Gaines would lead to a much greater loss than 30 students, and that it would be a loss that impacts you year after year. The worst part of all this is how unnecessary it is. We have been shown that the building is currently self-sustaining at a positive of more than $300,000 this year. If this figure was to remain the same for future school years, that means that the closure of our school will save you absolutely nothing while costing a piece of your community everything. If the main question you are asking today is what could you possibly do to give our children the same experience that is being had in other places within the district, I have your answer. Keep our building open for our children. Allow for early childhood programs before and after care, and community education to encourage further use of the building and add to the value of our space. Give us a principal that can devote their time to our staff and our children, and retain our current teachers and support staff. Bring the makerspace materials that have been ready and waiting for Gaines Elementary students into one of our classrooms, and for once in a long while, give them some consistency. We should continue to use our building for early childhood services and as an elementary school to encourage new families to come and for current families to stay. If you choose to close Gaines as an elementary building, you are actively choosing to ostracize a portion of your district instead of helping it grow and prosper.
Is there anyone else?
Hi, my name is Christine Solstein. I'm here to talk about games. I have been to most of the meetings that I could attend, and I am a community member. I was also a student. I moved back to Gaines with the sole purpose of putting my child at Gaines Elementary because I had felt that was the best place for him to be. I am currently attempting to buy a home in the village. I cannot see a reason to continue to invest in buying a home within the village or even within the district. The school I wish my child to attend were to close. I know many feel the same. It's hard enough to try and find a home to begin with. But to find a place that offers the community that is more than just a community, but a family that we have out at Gaines is really hard. And I feel like our students have been through enough in the last 2 years. Especially our current first graders, followed very closely by our current second graders. And I am asking you not to make them to make another change. They have been cut off from their preschool year, their kindergarten year. They were brought back to a school where they could not play or touch other students or teachers and had to mask. And now you want to send them to yet another school next year. And for our first graders, that means another school the following year. That is 3 different school buildings within a 14-month period. And I feel like our children have been through enough. They need the stability. Please don't take that away from our children. I have listened to everything that Melissa and Patty and Jennifer and many of the other people of the village who have spoken, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything that they have said. Please take that into consideration.
Hi everybody, my name is Krista Melton, and I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago. It's really novel, and I'm not going to read it again to you, but everything I said in there, I wholeheartedly meant. I really want you to keep Gaines Elementary open. Our kids need it. Look how many people there are here at this meeting, and I guarantee you most of those are here to get kids. We care about that school, and you can make it so that there are people who come to that school, so that it's sustainable for years and years. There are ways to do it. One of them, you need to think about redrawing those district boundaries. You need to do it. Not the district's boundaries to go outside the district, but within the elementary schools. You need to think about that. Why is it that you have so many kids in these other 2 elementaries and less kids at Gaines? Well, part of that is because of your boundaries that you have set. So fix that. And then commit to allowing us to stay there. You need to do that. People are not coming in. That's part of the reason why. You heard it at the last meeting. There was a lady with a baby in her arms who said, I didn't put my kids in enough for it. You need to commit. And you need to put out some advertising to try to get more people in. And you need to try to invest more in that building. And make it so that people in the community might actually get into that building and find out, oh, this is really great. And then send their kids there. You can do all of those things. You have the power, and you can do it. So that's fun.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hi, I didn't plan to speak, so I'm nervous, so excuse that. My name is Jacqueline Cripps. I have a child at Gaines, and I have a child at Swartz Creek Middle School. I will tell you that I've never had an issue with the things that my child told me when he came home from Gaines. It was always a great day. He loved his teachers, he loved the students, and now he went to the middle school. And currently, he comes home every day telling me something that happened that I just can't believe that happened, and he's in 7th grade. He was virtual last year, so this is all new to him, and it's obviously new to me. So you guys are wondering why parents are taking their kids after Gaines. Because we have a great experience at Gaines. We don't have issues. And then they go to the middle school and they come home and they tell us these things, and they're things that me as a parent, I don't want my children to hear these things. These are not things that a 7th grade boy should be hearing other kids tell each other. They're not right. So Gaines is not the issue here. We need to figure out why our kids are leaving that are in district, because it's not Gaines, they're staying at Gaines. Every student that goes to Gaines is staying there, but they leave when they get to the middle school or the high school. So why are we not figuring out what is the issue and how can we solve it, instead of, we're gonna close Gaines because kids aren't staying there, because it doesn't make sense. And that's all I'm gonna say.
My name's John Watson. I graduated from Creek in 2006. I went to Gaines for 5 years, and I absolutely loved it. Out of all the teachers that I experienced in the district, 3 of my top favorite teachers came from Gaines. My 5th grade teacher taught there for 34 years and walked to work every day. I got the pleasure to grow up next door to her. I mean, that's a community that is like no other in the district. I mean, I see all the money being put into the high school, into the football field, and in the middle school, but yet Gaines has a fence that got torn up by a car accident. It's been sitting like that for a month or so. I mean, we got kids on a playground with broken glass out there. I mean, that is just a shameful in my mind. You know, my kids went to Gaines, my brothers went to Gaines, my aunts, everybody in my family went to Gaines. And the close down of that building is gonna hurt your district more than it's gonna help it. And that's all I got.
Hi, my name's Slade Ranger. I also went to Gaines with John. It used to be the high school, if you guys don't know that. My dad went to school there. We don't live in the district no more, but please, if I was to go back in the district, that is where I would want my kids to go back to. I went to Gaines. Miss Atherton. Awesome teacher. My sister and brother. She taught them. It's an amazing school. Please do not close it down.
Thank you. Anyone else before we move on?
I'm Jennifer Creed. I've sent you numerous emails. I hope you read them. I'm gonna talk about our community for a moment. We have amazing groups of men and women. We have the, Knights of Columbus. We have the Eagles, or I'm sorry, not the Eagles, the Lions Club. And then we have the board for our town. And they have all wanted to put money into our school as a charity. Like the bike rack that got stolen, they would like to replace that. And that's just one of the things they are talking about doing. So not only are you gonna lose the support of our community as parents that attend our school, you are potentially taking away the ability to better our school from the charity work that our community is putting involved in. So you have to think about that as our community as well, wanting to support you all. We cannot support you all if you cannot support us. And we are asking you, give it 5 years before you make this decision again. Give it 2 years. Give it a year. Let us show you that we will work with you to make it work. You have been flooded with emails of all these ideas. Help us implement them, because we cannot do it without you. Think about it. Give us time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I am Jen Danilon. I am an employee of the district. I work at Gaines, but I also want to talk to you as a parent. I currently have 2 children that attend Gaines, a 5th grader and a 2nd grader. And last meeting, we talked about a mailer that went out to mark if your child would be attending kindergarten in the fall. My youngest will be starting kindergarten, and my plan is for her to attend Gaines as well. But because we don't live in Gaines, we were not given that mailer, so you can add her to your list of the next best hang around at games. At the last meeting, and I've heard this said before, thinking of all the things that games kids miss out on, what the games kids are missing. I would like you to consider the things that games kids do get. We're the only building in the district that's K-5. As a parent, that means a lot to me. When the district decided to split into K2 and 3-5, as a parent, I wanted my children to attend school together. Gaines offers that, and there's families that come to our building because we offer that. In our building, because of that, our older children are able to mentor and set examples for our youngers. K2 kids have not had a normal year ever in their life at school. Our older kids have shown them what it's like to be at school. There we don't have a lot of behaviors. We buddy with our other younger kids. They buddy read, we do projects, they work together. Also was asked as a teacher, you know, I don't have the ability to plan with other people that teach 4th grade with me, but that's not true. COVID has taught us that we can reach out by Zoom. Zoom's an amazing thing. I have Zoomed with other 4th grade teachers in the district. We have not by Zoom, I've emailed, I've met in person. So don't think that that hinders any of this anymore, because there's multiple ways to reach out to other teachers. There's a few more things, but I'm probably getting close. Just know that there's other things that games kids do get, even if they may miss out on other things. Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Crystal Kwiaczynski. I did not fill out a card, but I will. I'm from Gaines. My whole family's from Gaines for generations. But my first daughter, who's in middle school now, originally went to Moorish for the first 2 years. She had a very hard time there when we were pulling her out of the district, when we found a house for sale in Gaines. And I said, we will stay in district and we will go to Gaines. She wasn't there but 2 years, and the Gaines lines moved, and we were back in Moorish. Same house on Grand Blanc Road, just east of Moorish, so now we're stuck at Moorish again. So we were able to do inter-district school of choice, and I drive her beyond the border to the other side where my parents live, and we were able to catch the bus there. And now she's on to middle school, but now I have my son who's in 4th grade, and we're going to do that every year. And once he is done, I will have a little one coming up pretty soon who will go to Gaines. If it is closed, we would be shipped off to Moorish. Since I've already been driving for the last few years, I guarantee that would not happen. I would find another school that I would drive them to. My daughter, who is in middle school, the only reason why we have kept her at Swartz Creek is because of her Gaines friends, because she has been having a hard time at the middle school. So I do not see an issue with pulling her out of the middle school if Gaines closes too. My whole family would probably go to Lake Benton or Linden, since those two are the closest. As far as people saying Gaines is less because we have combined classes, in many ways, I see it as a plus. My son, who's in 4th grade, cries when he thinks about the 5th graders moving on, because those are his friends and he knows them all by name. He also knows most of the younger elementary school kids. He knows his reading buddies who are in 1st and 2nd grade, and the kids that he helps with math. As a community, as the school is such a community, they all know each other, and I can't imagine him or my daughter, who's going to be coming out pretty soon, go to another school. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Hannah Beach, and I'm currently a 5th grade student at Gaines Elementary. I know if the school closes, it won't affect me directly because I'm off to middle school next year. However, it will affect my mom's job as an SSP, my brother who also goes to Gaines, and many more families. I've been to 3 different schools, and Gaines is the only one I've felt comfortable and accepted at. Everyone at our school is like family. Go to our school for even a few hours, and you'll feel like family too. Even if you do close our school down and transfer kids to other Swartz Creek schools, it will become overpopulated. This school has been open for many generations, and I hope it stays open for many more generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Mason, and I am a fourth grader student in Gaines Elementary. I don't want you guys to close Gaines Elementary because I have lots of nice friends there. I enjoy going there. And also, I'm a student council member. I would like to stay as student council, and Gaines is like one of the only schools that does student council. Their playground is nice. All the teachers are really nice. And I just think that we should keep it up.
Thank you. All right, last call. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, everyone.
I'll make mine short and sweet. Melissa Neal, Gaines Village. I'm also an employee, but I'm speaking as a parent and a resident. All I'm gonna say is I moved from a Cyrene district, was originally a Gaines district, ended up a Cyrene district, to the village because I wanted my kids to go to Gaines. I think all the people here kind of made that statement, same thing. They moved to that district because they wanted to be in Gaines Elementary. I know you have a hard choice to make. I don't envy you, I don't want to be in your chair.
Thank you. All right. Seeing or hearing no one else, we will move on with our agenda. All right, we do have before us a consent agenda that does include the payment of our bills. I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Jack? Support. Jessica? Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Sue, can you do roll call, please?
Frank Scannon,
Yes.
John Singer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenay,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Chuck Noki,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes. Thank you, motion passes. All right, next on the agenda, we have superintendent report. And I'm gonna ask Mr. Reinke to give his report, and then we'll move on to Elena Cook for her student board representative.
Thank you so much. We have board tours that were scheduled recently, and we have not been able to get into a few different buildings. So Sue's going to be reaching out just with a survey for you guys to answer to see if you want to attend. We still would like to get you to DEEC, the Virtual Learning Center, and Little Dragons Learning Center. So that's something that's going to be coming up as well, this spring, and we can get everybody through. That would be awesome. Spring is in full swing, legitimately. We have our spring sports program starting, and we just had choir festival at the high school. I'm sure Elena's going to talk more about that. We also are planning coming up, a date to be determined, but stay tuned. There's going to be a really neat celebration happening for the community at our stadium here. Typically, we've done a college signing day for our student athletes, and this year, we're actually going to be doing a celebration, kind of community open house for people to come and visit the stadium, see the new field, and they'll be doing ceremonial presentations of those seniors that are going on to play at the next level, which will be a lot of fun. So Mr. Treptowski is putting that together, and we'll be releasing dates and then sending out invites here shortly, but I do believe it's going to be near the end of April, early May. Also want to let everybody know next week is spring break. Don't forget, don't show up on Monday. We also have a really cool new Swartz Creek View insert that's inserted. It's no longer called the Swartz Creek View. It's actually called the Genesee County View, but they did a really nice insert, and it's kind of a state of the schools recap, has some other additional information about the district in there, which is really positive. They're going to be continuing to do that, and that mailer goes out to all residents in the community. So it's, not just hitting our parents, it's hitting everybody. And so that will go out 4 times a year. They're going to send another one out before summer, and then of course one before we come back. So that's pretty exciting. Also want to let families know and the board know that we've been getting listening calls, and we've been getting them for a few weeks on the calendar. People want to know for vacations and when we're coming back and things like that for next year. The calendar is something that we negotiate with our teachers, and that is an ongoing process. I will tell you that our hope is to have a calendar soon, and so we continue to work towards that. And as soon as we have something that we can share, we will send that out. But we are working diligently on that. And just sometimes I think people think that maybe the district just unilaterally makes that decision, and that's not the case. So we have that work that's being done right now, and we'll continue to do so. So lots of exciting things happen as the snow's starting to melt away and the rains are coming in, but it's a great place to be. So thank you for all of your support, and to the community for their support as well.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Thank you so much. All right, moving on. Elena, would you like to give us your student board representative report? I know this is a busy time.
It is a very busy time. At Elms and Morris Elementary, the Blueberry Squad is going around school posting positive messages and encouraging students and staff. They have recently held a candy sale which raised close to $600, which is being donated to the Whaley Children's Center. They also hosted a giving tree where everything was donated to the Children's Center as well. And they are hosting a 5th grade versus teachers basketball game sometime next month, with all donations from the game will also be donated to the center. It is also March's Green Month. It's also March's Green Month. There's lots of things going on, from reading theme days to Reader Aware Challenge at Moorish, or Mr. Sampson's Super Slice Sandwich. For each school and every classroom that meets their personal goal, they get to pick an ingredient at Elms or a piece of clothing at Moorish for their principals to either wear or eat. All elementaries have something going on, but those are the two that I were aware of. Geek Siren and Games is hosting a hoverboard and scooter night at Rollerhaven on March 24th from 6:30 to 8:30. Admission is $7, with 50% of the admission going towards the school. And then the Me and My Guy dance will be happening on April 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. in the middle school gym basement. Our Swartz Creek Middle School competitive cheer team won Flint Metro champions. And then our high school quiz bowl came in 2nd place in their tournament the other day. I'd like to give a big congratulations to Mason Hudale for placing 4th in the MHSAA state wrestling finals, and to Dawson Stebbins on finishing 3rd in the 181-pound bracket in powerlifting state finals. Our high school leadership and student council has been hosting Say Something Week, which circles around positive thinking and awareness for bullying and other topics. Like Mr. Micah said, spring sports are in full swing with softball, lacrosse, soccer, baseball, track and field, and several other events beginning. Today there was a track and field meet, and there was supposed to be a lacrosse game, but I'm not sure what's happening with that. It has been a very busy few weeks in our performing arts department. Competition season has officially begun. A few weeks ago, Swartz Creek hosted their band festival, where our high school band got straight 1s or A's, and our middle school also got a Division I rating. They are both eligible for state, but unfortunately they will not be able to attend this year because of COVID. For choir, there have been 2 competitions. A few weeks ago, we hosted Soul Ensemble, where Madrigals competed and got a 29 out of 30, and we had several soloists who competed. They all medaled, and we even had 3 soloists who had a perfect 30 out of 30 score. All soloists and madrigals are eligible for states this weekend, and they are all attending. Yesterday, we hosted choir festival and had 2 groups compete, both being straight 1s and, again, are headed to state. For drama club, we had our senior showcase, which was very successful in allowing students to experience every aspect of putting on a show, as they were able to completely take over. There was no adult supervision, which is very scary. Aladdin Jr. also premiered last weekend and was highly successful, not only in ticket sales, but also in overall performance. In fact, there was one day where they sold more tickets than the high school drama club did at their fall show. So. And then the high school drama club has started rehearsals for their spring musical, which will take place on April 29th, 30th, and May 1st. The Swartz Creek Performing Arts Boosters, as well as the band boosters,
would also like to give a big congratulations to Mr. Jeremy Love as he is the new PAC coordinator, as we have not had one since Mrs. Cooper left. Like Mr. Micah said, next week is spring break and everyone's looking forward to that. And then once we come back, we have a regular week and then standardized testing begins. So that is a big, This Friday, kindergarten through 8th grade has a half day as it is the end of the third marking period. And then on April 15th, we have no school because of Good Friday. As for the student roundtable, it was supposed to be Monday. However, due to a few different reasons, we had to cancel it. We were hoping to reschedule it for the next month or so. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Elena. Does someone have a question or comment? Nice job. Thanks for sharing all the information from across the district. And I agree with you. Woo woo. All right, moving on. We have several board subcommittee reports, beginning with policy. Jack was unable to attend that day, so I acted as chair on his behalf. We did meet on the 15th. We looked at the policy 4217, which is the social media policy for the district. And we asked if we could consult with Troon, who creates the policy, who's also our attorney, to make sure that we have stronger policy language. Ben did mention that there are administrative guidelines to the policies that could explain how that would be implemented or enforced, and he'll bring that to the next policy meeting. He also shared that the Troon policy update will be published this morning, and that he's working on getting us access to those Troon policy updates as they're made available, as opposed to having to look at all of them at once. There were no public comments, and we moved into our academic achievement committee meeting. We had a pretty short agenda list, but it was a long conversation. Ben talked about the opportunities within the state to expand funding for early childhood development and some options for the district that could expand capacity and opportunities for children and families. And this could be potential options for Little Dragons and games. And then early childhood education will be included in our upcoming strategic planning discussions. Similarly, there was no public comment, and that was the end of that meeting. Any questions on either of those?
No? Okay, let's move on. We have finance, Jessica.
Thanks. The Finance Committee met on March 14th here, and attending were myself, Chuck Melke, Brian Spanik, Ellis Parks, Ben Micah, Chris Gray, Rod Heatherton, and R.C. Hunt. We had two presenters, Doug Haskins with Natural Disaster Service and Dr. Harlan Verrill. We called to order at 2:07. We had a non-agenda item, which was the presentation requested by Brian Spanik, given by Doug Haskins of Natural Disaster Service and Dr. Harlan Verrill regarding UV sanitizing units for the room, air, and potentially for the water. The discussion of the information shared happened, and we agreed that further follow-up would be needed. Additionally, our cash and investment summary as of February 28th is general fund $6,069,443.33. Our sinking fund is $1,092,160.80. Food service is $1,001,531.51. Student activity fund is $272,767.70. Our debt service is $2,461,517.90. Our bond capital project fund is $13,576,246.64. Giving our total cash and investments $24,473,667.88. We then discussed bids and quotes. Coming from the general fund, the high school and middle school had technology needs, cabling and electronics totaling about $8,000. The general fund as well. We have purchased an ADA ramp and skirting for the field stage, with costing roughly $23,000. Our lawn care service, we put out a bid. We asked 12 vendors to bid. We had 3 bidders. The lowest was T's at $2,395 per visit, and it is a multi-year contract. Sorry if I stole your thunder on that one. The general fund as well, we are purchasing 8 building floor scrubbers and other scrubbing equipment totaling about $4,000 per unit. And from the bond, the elementary night locks have been purchased at $2,000 per building. Also coming from the bond fund, a kiln has been purchased for $6,800. As well, we signed a 5-year lease for our PA systems for $9,845. And we discussed the food service contract. The bids were due on March 17th. And I know we have more information later on that. We also discussed the payroll mitigation system. We use the GISD for our payroll system, and they were doing an update. So that happened on March 18th. We had no public comment. There was a little bit of committee discussion, possibly budgeting in the future for a floater position to cross-train across multiple positions for the business office. The Finance Committee talks ended at 3:52 and moved into the Operation Committee meeting. I will ask that you accept my report as submitted.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Chuck. Any comments or questions on that motion to accept the report? Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Jessica LaNave,
Yes.
Terry Germain,
Yes.
Brian Spanik,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
John Sayer.
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thanks, Jessica. Any other questions for Jessica? If not, Chuck?
At 3:53 PM, we started the Operations Building and Site Committee meeting. It was presented here. Present was myself, Chris, Rod, Brian, Ben, RC, Alicia, and Doug from Natural Disaster Services, which Jessica already touched on. We talked first about the high school cafeteria. The dishwashers were installed, and that cost approximately $29,000. It was taken from food services budget, with an additional $4,000 of installation for electrical, plumbing, and drainage. We talked about elementary playgrounds in the district to make them all uniformed. So Elms Road will be being redone according to RC. They'll be revamping it. It'll be more of a master plan, and the entire concept should be new. This will help the district and use this as a template for the rest of the elementary buildings. This will be done by a certified playground company designer, and will be built out as an RFP in the future. The new playgrounds will meet all state codes and local codes, will be easier to maintain, be uniform, easier to monitor and observe for the staff out there for the safety of the district's children. Should be noted that all of these playgrounds have to be inspected every year. We talked about the high school gym projects. The high school gym is already under construction. New lockers are being installed. The stages are all going to be replaced. There's going to be new flooring, mostly by sanding and repainting them all. There'll be new bleachers, new wall coverings, new paint throughout, and this should be coming very soon. Some of these costs are covered underneath the bond project, and some will be out of the general budget. There was discussion about a scoreboard, but we'll have to bid that out because they can cost anywhere from $25,000 to $75,000 per bed. We talked about replacing the flooring in most of our buildings, which some of it will be done by bond, some of it will be done by general budget. And RC is going to try out some new carpet tiles, and they're supposed to be better, durable, easier to clean, more resistance to tears and rips, and there's antimicrobial, which is better for the children's health. We'll be getting a monthly update on this product, and he'll have that installed soon. We talked about the tennis courts. We've talked about moving them, refacing them, bringing in new tennis courts. The cost is too much. So it was decided by the committee that maybe we should just reface the tennis courts and replace the poles as needed, and somebody will have to get a new bid on that. RC is going to be doing that. Jessica touched on the ultraviolet lighting. This company gave a presentation at Brian's invitation. It was a great presentation, and we're going to check on prices for that to see if the current system can be upgraded, but there's much more discussion needed on that. We talked briefly about Mary Crapo and baseball fields. We're waiting for the RFP to come out soon for Mary Crapo, what we're going to determine to do with that building, and putting in one additional baseball field here at the high school underneath a consent judgment that the district has to apply to. And then we waited for public comment. There was none. We adjourned at 4:35 p.m. And the next meeting will be April 4th here at the building at 3 p.m.
Any questions for Chuck? Thank you, Chuck. All right, next on our agenda, we have the operations report from RC.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Mr. R.C. Hunt, who's our Director of Operations, and Mr. Hunt oversees transportation, custodial, he oversees a lot of departments, maintenance. He's going to talk a little bit about all those areas and just give you his kind of annual report.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be able to speak on behalf of the Operations Department. Tonight, my update report will be concerning the appreciation of everything that we have been faced with over the past few years. We've done a lot of projects. We've been through COVID, and sometimes I get overwhelmed and I don't take the time out of my day to go appreciate every single one of our employees. So I wanted to do this presentation to show appreciation for them. So if we can go on the next slide. So a couple of the tasks over the past few years that we came across with Little Dragons, the K2, 3-5 configuration, COVID with our food distribution, building checks, signage, drinking fountains, sanitizations, the bond, staffing, and then overall just all the other little projects that come along the way. Last year, I discussed the overall square footage of the district, and I wanted to put this in here again so that everybody can understand the amount of square feet and real estate that we oversee. As you can see, the total is 580,989 square feet. Last year, I mentioned that is equivalent to 400 average size homes in Michigan. So you can see very quickly, that's a lot of area to take care of for roughly 50 employees. First one, Little Dragons, maintenance. They worked very hard, very diligent. That was one of my first projects as I arrived here. And then custodial, they did a lot of the cleanup and waxing of the floors. The next slide, I'll go into more detail here. So as you can quickly see, Little Dragons, for those that did not know, was a doctor's office, and we 100% demoed the inside. Majority of the demolition was done by contractors, but before they came in, we had to remove all the furniture, ceiling tiles, ceiling grid, lighting, structure, and all of that. Our electrician worked with the sign company to get power out to the sign. And then you can see that piece of playground equipment up to the upper right, that used to be a piece over at Mary Crapo. Our team actually did that in-house, removed and reinstalled over there at Little Dragons, as well as 40 yards of mulch, spread that by hand. So as you can see here, very quickly, a lot of work in a short amount of time. So I want to really appreciate all the work that they've done. Next, K through K2 and 3-5. Maintenance did a lot of the furniture moves, moving classrooms from the lower elementary up and then vice versa. Custodial, they did, again, helped with the furniture moves, packing of the boxes, and getting them onto the trailer so maintenance could deliver them. And then transportation, they did a lot of extra help too. They pitched in when they could. And then, yep, we'll go here. So you can see very quickly how packed full our classrooms are in the district, and it's not very hard for one person to pick up a 30-pound desk and move it. Where it gets difficult is multiple weeks doing it all day long, moving hundreds of desks, hundreds of chairs, loading them in and then unloading them, moving them 3-4 times. So it didn't go unnoticed. I just haven't had the opportunity to appreciate that. So thanks again for the departments there. COVID, this was one of the biggest bears of them all. As everybody was at home, it was very difficult to send staff in when they released that landscapers and outdoor people could come in. We had to do daily building checks, make sure there's no floods, and then we helped with food distribution. The custodial had to do a lot of extra cleaning, sanitizations, transportation. They had to wear the backpacks, spray down our buses. twice a day. And then they also helped with food distribution, driving out to the local communities and delivering food. So right here we can see the upper left. I can't even tell you how many crates of milk we moved, within hundreds of crates per week, delivering them from the warehouse to the high school to the middle school. We ordered over 500 stickers that were placed in the buildings to make sure that when the students came back, everybody could comply and had a better understanding what our regulations would be. There's a photo of the backpacks that we had in each building. Custodians between each recess had to go out there and spray down the playground equipment. We had to spray the classrooms down with these. The drinking fountains in the middle, we upgraded all of our drinking fountains that did have capabilities to be upgraded to the touchless drinking fountain. We had to put locks on every one of them. You can see the Perel hand sanitizer to the right there. We installed a bunch of those, as well as the 1 gallon ones on the stands. Every classroom got a 1 gallon jug. We did 400 bottles of spray sanitizer up top. Then also, you can see the sneeze guards in every office in every building. With the bond, the difficult part with that is there's not always planning on our end. So my guys could be busy, and we have contractors that are rushing to get stuff done, working hard. So they could say, hey, we need one of your guys over here right away to run the wire to a door. So our electrician is constantly going through the district, moving from one door to the next, rewiring card swipes, AI phones, and whatnot. As you can see here, other things they've done, overseeing warranty work, new trainings. We have a lot of new programs, custodial, constant cleaning. I don't know if anybody's ever done construction work. You know, with construction, you create a lot of debris, dust. Construction, they do their main cleaning of the big items, but we had to come back and do all the fine touch-ups there. And then transportation, sometimes we had to reroute them, go around construction for a few days, go a different route there. So that was a fun one there. As you can see, upper left is all the blueprints that we've received through this. I don't know how many hours I've spent with the guys going through these blueprints. And then you got all the brand new doors, our new lettering and numbering of the doors. In the middle there, that's our new train system, so we can remotely see all of the classrooms in the district and very quickly figure out what's wrong in the classrooms. So that's another program we had to learn. The banners in the bottom there and the dragon sign, we installed those in-house, as well as you can barely see the dragon in the center. We actually installed that down low. The dragon statue, installed that today. Then it just showed we did some sprucing up. That's an old sign on the upper right. We painted it, put a new sign on there. And then every building got the new AI phones in the bottom right. So again, running new data power. And one of the big difficulties with COVID came with staffing shortages. And we've had a very strong core custodial team that stuck strong through all of that. Our custodial supervisor has done over 100 interviews in the past 2 years, and that's very difficult to get 100 interviews when maybe 10% of the people actually show up. So to me, that's saying she's called 1,000 people in and only 100 show to get 100 interviews. So I want to show appreciation to her. And then the transportation, every day was a bus driver get COVID, then you got to change your routes. Never once did I have a bus driver complain. Mary, every day, she's last minute, she can whip together a map faster than anybody I've ever seen. And then marketing, we always have to update our banners, our flyers, our kiosk out on Miller Road and Facebook post, and we came up with the QR codes, and a lot of this is just bouncing off each other's brains in the office, and a lot of hours go into it, so I want to appreciate that. And then the last slide here, this is overall, like I said in the last slide, I think it's unbelievable how many chances the staff has had to be upset, to be down, but it's always been positive. They've always done it with a smile on their face. They never yelled back at me, I don't want to do that. You guys are pushing me to the limit. I think every one of them realizes that they're here to be here for the kids, and I really appreciate that because that is why I'm here, and to see that they have the same common goal that I have makes it very easy for all of us to collaborate as a team. So, any questions?
Thanks, RC. Anyone?
Brian?
All the phones, did we install that or did we have a company install those phones?
We installed all of the AI phones. That's the phone at the front desk that allows you to see the parent or person at the front door. So that was, most of those were done by the IT team or Bill Loader.
Wow, you got a lot of talent here.
Yeah.
Also, the buses, were they sprayed down still? Do they continually do that still?
That is not done as often with the backpacks. We scaled that back to the hand sprayers and washcloths.
I'll just say thank you to you and the entire team and everything that they do. Because it still astounds me when you stop and think about it, the slide with the square footage and the number of acres and what we do. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
RC, you mentioned that your team doesn't push back and they've done whatever it takes, and that takes leadership. So thank you for what you've done as a leader.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Sure.
Real quick, before we get to the gains discussion, because I know that one's going to take a long time, could we quickly talk about our committee meeting schedule? I know it's not on here, but due to my new job, if we don't move things around, I feel that it would be not fair for me to be chairman of the policy committee, seeing as it conflicts with when I start work. Would it be possible to talk about that right now, or do you want it to wait?
So do you know when you are available, so you could maybe even share that now? And if we aren't prepared to make a decision, we could get back to.
Yeah, so usually I get home around 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the afternoon. And I'd be available, I could come straight from work, that wouldn't be a problem either.
Is there a particular day of the week, or is Tuesday still good, or?
Tuesday would be fine.
Okay. Any comments from board members?
You're asking for evening meetings? Is that what you're
I think
saying?
that's what he's suggesting.
Being new, I just don't know how it's been done in the past. Would that mean that we'd take academic achievement and do those together, because we try to group them? Okay.
That'd be fine.
For Tuesday evenings as opposed to the mornings? That works way better for me, but don't do it around me, it's the chairman.
Brian?
I'm fine with that.
Jessica? Okay. Are there other times, Jack?
Any day really works.
Okay, so why don't we talk about this? Maybe we can send our availability to Sue and do maybe a, what do you call it, a doodle poll? And see what the best time is. We don't want to exclude anyone from participating, obviously. So, but thank you for that. So generally in the evening, right? Did you have something related to that? Okay. So if everyone could just send Sue their availability, those folks that are regularly attending those meetings, if there's a night that's not convenient, and we would look at later in the day.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, we will go to our Gaines Elementary discussion. And I think, thank you, Mr. Reinke has put together the matrix that we asked him to assemble all of our options. And we're going to go through those, just an overview of these.
Sure. So at the last meeting, when we had a full discussion just about the elementary decision, one of the things that became clear through the discussion was you really kind of have emerged, three primary options, and then from those options, you may have subsidiary options that would become available. So As you know, my role in this is really to, provide you with the information you're asking for, as has been throughout the year. One of the first options that we discussed at the last meeting would be essentially to have no change at all. So that would be, option one, which would be essentially to say, we're running the building very efficiently right now. Obviously the challenges of that we've discussed very, very openly are the challenges of having a principal that's split between multiple sites. So there would probably need to be some discussion about how that, manifests itself. But it's certainly an option that we could say, no change, keep things as they are. And there are pros and cons to that decision, of course. Option two would be to increase the support out at Gaines Elementary School. So you'd essentially say, in addition to what we're doing now, let's provide some additional supports. And what those supports are additional decisions that could be discussed. And they all, of course, have, additional pros and cons. A third option was to close the building. I don't want to take that decision off the table if that's the direction you want to go, but what I heard from discussion was there wasn't much support for that. So that meant that then, as a re-clarification, the option three would be to discontinue K-5 learning at Gaines Elementary School. And from there, of course, you'd have other additional decisions that could be made. There have been many, many ideas shared and discussed, things such as running it as a community center. There have been talk of, early childhood, special education. A lot of these have come from the Gaines community at either town halls or shared through email. There have been conversations about running it as an early elementary school and conversations about running it as an upper elementary school. And so the purpose for tonight, obviously, as you kind of weigh out those pros and cons to every decision, is essentially to come to, if not a consensus, at least a point where you're comfortable making a motion. And then, of course, as you get into action items, that would be for action tonight. So that just kind of I'm trying to set you up for your conversation and so that you can discuss those things. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks again for putting this together so clearly and concisely. So I'm going to start with asking my fellow board members to ask questions if you have them, to make some comments. I'd like to spur a conversation. I know we had a special board meeting, but I'd like to make sure that we're looking at all of our options. The process could be that we start to rule out some of these options because we have made a commitment that we're going to make a decision this evening. So anyone want to start?
I can start if nobody else wants to. In my emails, I read through them and I see a vast number of parents who explain to me that they don't want to discontinue the legitimate, well, not legitimate, but the schooling at Gaines Elementary in terms of K through 5 in favor of just putting early learning out there. And I guess we should talk about that first, because from what I've read, what I've seen, what I've heard from most of the parents that are talking to us is they don't want to discontinue the quote-unquote standard education in favor of just an early learning center. So I guess maybe we could start there. If anyone else wants to jump in.
Go ahead, Brian.
As I look at this, and I've contemplated a lot of hours into this, I'm thinking, is there a possibility we can go with like the 2B, the partial increase at a principal, and the 3B, early childhood center, and the 3C, special education center? With that, I know I hear often, all things are possible. But is it really?
All things are possible, Mr. Stepanek.
Okay,
yes. I mean, it's really, yes, we can make work within reason. I guess there are some things I would tell you flat out, it won't work. But yes, I mean, certainly within reason, those things absolutely can happen. So I think it would be, you know, what the solution that you're trying to create there would be. I certainly could speak to those things, but yes, we could do any of those types of things.
We would have the K-5, and we'd have the early childhood, and we'd have the special education. And, I mean, if we had to cut special education for some reason, but I think all three of those options, keep the building open, of course, with a principal. As far as the social worker and the support, well, you probably need a support staff to operate, but that could actually be under the guise of GSRP or something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking kind of big, and how many students will that school hold or house?
Over 300.
Oh, I was thinking it was bigger.
That's pretty big.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, are you talking about early childhood and special ed that's, I know early childhood is there already, so are you talking about continuing that or adding more?
Adding
early
more,
child?
yeah.
Okay.
Adding more, adding, you know, of course, the GSRP Head Start and the early fives. And I just wonder if I'm thinking too big, too optimistic, and I don't know, I've never managed this before, so I just think it'd be incredible if we could do all of that.
I think you're not thinking too big, but if we actually jump to the last page, the option 3D. Now, this was my big idea, and I presented this to Ben, but let me quickly just discuss what I mean with it. So it's a bit of a compromise. It allows for us to think even bigger than that, and it solves another issue, which is we have had multiple people tell us that Moorish and Cyring are a little crowded. Well, if we were to take Gaines Elementary, we could turn it into a K-2 elementary. This would be a compromise. It would absolutely keep the building open. If we took some of those Cyring and Moorish families, we could distribute them more evenly throughout the K-2 buildings, and we could almost make it so that there's 300 students in each of those buildings, which would, again, it'd be a compromise, but it keeps the building open. It would open up those avenues for more resources, that full-time principal. It would make it so that the building would be considered fully operational, whereas it's, I believe, by the Treasury currently not, if I'm not mistaken. It would make it so that maybe more families would want to stay within the Swartz Creek system as they move through, because they'd have to go to, you know, one of our other buildings in Elms or Deke. And it, in my opinion, would provide a more equitable education to our students. Yeah, it's thinking broad, but I think it's a possibility. It'd be a pretty big compromise, but I think it could work.
So are you also suggesting that scenario to change some of the boundaries of K-2? I think that's what you said about redistribution, because...
Not necessarily the boundaries, but instead evenly distributing those K-2 students. And I don't know exactly how that would yet be done. You could redistrict just for K-2, though you could also ask families within those buildings, get a number and say, listen, would you be okay with, or would you want to even go to Gaines? We'll provide the shuttle, we'll provide the transportation, and we'll get you out there if you'd like to go. It wouldn't even necessarily, we wouldn't necessarily have to redistrict everything. We could, but I think we could also just survey and take a lot of those families who want to go out there, and we could evenly distribute them, and it would allow for smaller class sizes, more one-on-one time with teachers. It would take away all splits, just about. I know it's thinking big.
Madam President, I want to suggest to all my board members, kind of a tiered approach to this. I think we have multiple questions to ask before we get, I understand your suggestion or thing to think about, and then even Brian's talking, big picture, overarching. I think we have several first step questions. And we don't have to have the final say in exactly what we're going to do. Obviously, we need to before the fall starts. But I think the primary question we have on the table first, it's literally a yes or no. Are we closing the building or are we not? We can all be, if we can come to a conclusion on that piece, then we go to the next question. If we're not closing the building, then we have 1, 2, and 3. And if we decide, if everyone's like no on 1, maybe on 2, and absolutely on 3, then you take that answer and then you go on to the what's next. But I think if, first and foremost, if we can agree whether we're discussing or choosing to close the building or not, if it's not, okay, then we move on to the next step.
So Alicia, can you clarify for me what you mean by closing the building?
I'm sorry. I mean, that's on the table if we don't operate that building for any purpose. Close it or don't close it. So if the consensus is we're not closing it, now we have to discuss how are we going to operate it. So if we are all in agreement, it's going to remain open, remain one of our properties in our buildings, and we're going to maintain that and keep the lights on and people in there, then our next step would be, are we keeping it the same or are we looking at doing something different? So then if the decision is we're keeping it the same, we move on, we're done. If we're not keeping it the same, now we're into the second level. Okay, well, which option are we all more leaning towards? Discontinue K-5 and we're looking at something different, or are we looking at K-5 and we decide whether we're supporting that, not supporting that? And then if it is, no, we're looking at something completely different, then we need to make a decision. Is that something that we can do tonight, or is that further discussion? But we at least know the building's open, we're operating it, we're staffing it, we're looking for something completely different, and then we need to put some efforts and some more time and focus into that.
So I've not heard anyone say, I just want to confirm, I've not heard anyone say in our previous discussions that our goal is to shutter the building. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had the detailed discussion on that last month.
So I'm just confirming.
I can make that motion right now.
Agree.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we keep the building open no matter what we do. That building's gonna stay open. You guys know how I feel about closing buildings in general. So, I mean, if that will move this along quicker.
And I don't think we have to move on that. I think it just, like, if we have a consensus, then we go on to the next.
That's
and
fine.
then-
Yeah, that's fine, Alicia, because, yeah, we're not gonna.
So with regard to the matrix.
Yep.
So our goal is not to shutter the building. And as Ben has mentioned, winterize it. It just sits there, or not winterize it, as Mayor Crapo has been. And so if that is consensus, and I'm not hearing anyone strongly opposed to that, then I think our options become, as Alicia mentioned, is it to continue it in one fashion or another? Is it with a formal education for K-5, sorry, K-12 would have a real problem, K-5, or, and I think with that conversation, it kind of leads us down the path of our option 3s versus option 2, if you keep K-5 or K fill in the blank, then we would have to talk about the supports.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
It's just kind of one step at a time to make sure we're all on the same page and to not belabor we can all have pie in the sky conversations, but we don't necessarily have to figure out exactly what's going to be there in the fall as much as what's our focus and how are we going to design, whether we're keeping it the same or are we looking at a different avenue, right?
So in the effort to, I think someone said, potentially take off certain options that maybe we're in agreement that goes, I guess I'll put out there the no change. Only, that doesn't mean discontinue K-5, that's not what I'm saying. But I think in previous conversations at committee and at these tables, we've talked about that no matter how it stays open, K-5, other options, or if it was K-5, that we would need a different administrative structure. Because I think we've tried, and this isn't person related, this is structure related, we've tried the shared principal over 2 schools, and both schools are, that's just not, any human cannot do this. As far as try to be a principal across 2 elementary schools, I feel pretty confident that we've looked at a lot of data about that. So I think that's what option 1 is, no change, keep that principal split structure. And I think I've heard from my fellow board members, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that hasn't been working well. So I'm wondering if we should take that off of these options.
Well, I'd like to see a full-time principal there.
Which is 2B.
Yes. Yes, I would like to.
So option 1, anybody want option 1 still on the table?
I'm not hearing that that's the desire of this board at this point. No change, just as it exists, status quo.
So it doesn't mean stopping K-5, it just means we're either going to enhance that or look at different options. But basically, we wouldn't operate it in the exact same fashion it is right now.
I think there needs to be changes. So
I'm asking if
So
anybody wants
I'm going to take my pen, put a big X.
That's what I just did.
On option 1. All right, so our next options are to increase the supports if K-5 were to stay there. We've had conversations about the challenges, the expense, and the likelihood or not that we would see enrollment increases over time. Am I missing anything there? So we've talked about K-5, and that's the crux of this conversation, is whether it's feasible, right, to stay open. If it is, does it require us to dedicate additional resources to it? And that's what's listed here, is to increase the supports with the 2 different options, fully support it as the other buildings have resources, partially support it as we've just discussed, adding a full-time principal. And then the first third option that we have is to discontinue K-5, because that would then lead us down the remainder of the options for option 3.
So, if we look at option 3, and again, I'm thinking a little broader here, but if we take my idea, it also includes a full increase of, you get the full-time principal, more teachers, a social worker, support staff, you get all that, but also we have another issue solved with the overcrowding of a couple of our other elementary buildings, and it solves the financial issue at Gaines, even though they're running in the black. If we were to do the full increase, it gets rid of the financial issue. We'd have more than enough students out there to where we could do that full increase with the principal, with the extra staffing. So it's a combination of the 2 options. You could do the full increase while also doing the K-2.
I have a question. And this might go to you, and if I might ask our principals, if I may, can answer, and about whether or not there's overcrowding and whether or not if we make a shift, is there room in the buildings. I'll ask that question if it's okay for you to, if that's okay with them being here. If you don't want to answer, Ben can answer, just in your experience in the functioning of it. I guess that's what I'm asking, your day-to-day functioning. But it's okay.
Yeah.
If you want to answer it, that's fine. The other question I have, back to Jack's suggestion here. If I looked again at the numbers that we've had from before and just updated. For our kindergarten and first grade out in Gaines, we'll have like 11 and 17 students. How are we gonna increase the number of K-2 students to be so high to make it where it's not losing, it's not an even greater expense than what it currently is?
Right.
Like,
So first, and again, this would have to be a district-wide thing. We can't think with a scope here. We have to look broader, and we would have to ask families if they would want to. So for instance, Moorish, right, Moorish, if I'm not incorrect, Moorish has 431 students. If we asked them, and 100 of those families were more than happy to send their students to Gaines.
They haven't been till now, though. So that has been asked and available. So it's either in that scenario, you either have to redistrict and you essentially force them to either drive or they bus to that school, and that's their primary elementary. Or you don't and you're hoping for something that won't happen.
So we redistrict then, and we provide the transportation.
No, wait a minute. You're not gonna redistrict a class of 400 kids to move down to a smaller class. If I got 1,000 pounds of hay over there and 10 pounds of hay over there, and I gotta do something over here, I don't move that 1,000 pounds over there, I move the 10 pounds over there and combine them. No, I'm against that. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Why couldn't
that
we
makes
say-
no sense.
Why couldn't, if we were to provide a shuttle, for instance, why couldn't we say, we'll provide a shuttle out there?
Listen, okay, can I have the floor for a minute, Carrie? Okay. We voted a year and a half ago to combine K2 and 3-5. A couple of us were against it. I was one of them because I liked a traditional school. And that's okay, I supported the board because it's a vote up here. And I wanted to keep all the K-5 kids together. I liked it the way it was. We switched it, okay? And the biggest complaint I heard, and me being a Swartz Creek parent, and my kids went here, my nephews went here, is we like a school in the area. I lived on Miller Road for 28 years, and my kids walked to Cyrene, and I loved it. I knew where they were at. I could go pick them up. I could do what I wanted. Middle school is great. I don't think by us redistricting a bigger district or with more kids to move down to Gaines, it's like pitting two districts against each other, Gaines against Cyrene. I don't like that idea. And a lot of parents, as Alicia said, would have probably shipped them down there already if that's what they wanted. Right? Can they do that correctly now, Ben? If I'm in Cyrene or if I'm in Moorish, I can say I want my kid to go to Gaines.
Yes.
So what's going to change if we do that model?
I think what Jack's suggesting is that we reroute transportation, I think is what he's saying.
Well, then
and have-
first, why don't we just provide transportation? Have we provided transportation down to Gaines from these other elementary schools? Or are we saying to parents that you have to drive down there yourself?
So no, infrastructure-wise, in order to do that, it results in a very, very large and complex issue where we don't have enough drivers to do that.
We're short bus drivers.
I mean, if you were going to do that, you could create like a bus stop where you have a shuttle that parents could drop to, and then that, and then that would be a more manageable thing. But to go in and to carve out other areas would be very, operationally very problematic.
And if we were going to do that, I'd rather just keep it K-5 at Gaines and not split that school up, because that way if somebody wants to keep their kid in a traditional school of K-5, they have the option of taking their kid down there. It may be a little far for them, because some people would prefer that. So I prefer, it's a suggestion, and I'm personally against it, Jack. I'd rather keep it K-5 than make it K-2. That, to me, that's confusing.
Well, yeah, I'd like to keep it K-5 too. I'm trying to present, this is an option that I've looked at, and I've run them, it's not ideal, but we're not in ideal times. There needs to be some compromise here if we want to get to a place where we're now investing completely everything that we invest everywhere else. And if we invest this much, we will bring in more families who are saying to us, I don't want to send my student to Gaines because I don't know if it's going to shut down next year. Well, if we make that investment, well, now those families are going to say, okay, yeah, I want to go to Gaines because we're making the investment. We're showing we care. We want this to stay open. Bring your kids to us. We'll give them everything they need.
I guess, I feel like there's now our second question. It's kind of a one or the other. Either we're operating K-5 there, or we're looking at something different.
My issue is keep it K-5. I don't want to be splitting, if we, which I want to keep the building open, but I don't want to keep it open for K-2. I don't think there's going to be 7,500 kids from K-2 going to move down there. I just don't see that.
And that doesn't have to be the option. What I'm saying is either we're operating at K-2 and then we start deciding how are we supporting that, or I'm sorry, K-5, and how are we supporting that building in that way? Or are we looking at a different structure?
Well, if you run K-2 and you want to get the support staff in there, that's even going to cost us more money for less kids.
So I'm saying K-5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think that, just to try and.
K-5,
The question is, how do we afford it? I'm trying to give an option to afford those additional resources.
Again,
K-5, well, first of all, let's get some misconceptions out there. We redistricted, okay? We didn't do it, but the bus garage, Ben, and the admins redistricted. How many positions did we actually lose by redistricting? Because from the maps that I saw, you took a little bit from the east side of the district, but you took some from the north side of the district. What was the net loss here? Because I've heard different numbers. I've counted it up, but you tell me.
We've counted based on address. And what we had is there was an area, several square, it was really kind of a square mile block, but you're talking about Beers Road, went to Morris Road. We, at the time, and this is in 2020, we had 8 students that were displaced, and then moved to the Morris section.
Okay.
We then had 6 that were gained off of Seymour Road. So the net in that case were 2 students based on the facts of who we had in the district enrolled and at those addresses.
Okay. So I want to dispel that because everybody's saying we redistricted and we lost all these kids and we caused this mass exodus of Gaines, which is not true. Now, but I want to get that because everybody's moving students left and right, moving kids from Morris to Gaines or Gaines to Elms. I told you I like to keep them kind of in their area. We did the best we could. The K-5, and I think we've stated this before, Carrie, and you stated it 100 times, at the level of services for that small amount of kids, we can't afford to give them all the levels of service because we're losing, and people may get mad about the losing money issue, but we have to balance the whole district, not a small part of the district. So with that being said, if we do, I like Brian's idea of keeping K-5 open and then moving other kids down there to help supplement that. How much money will we gain if we move these other activities down there? And will that extra money be able to cover a principal and maybe a half a social worker or something, because it is a smaller actual school building, or there's students in there to the other schools. Will that work feasibly?
So I want to go
Thanks,
back to
Carrie.
Jessica's question about the student level within those buildings, and whether you and can respond?
Yeah, for sure. So I've said, we've looked at maps and things like that, and at the last meeting, I was asked, do you have the plan? And no, we don't have the plan specifically, because obviously we don't know what your decision is, and nor do you. You're making that tonight. But one of the things that I would say is that people become accustomed to the spaces that they're in. If you buy a storage area, it's instantly filled up, no matter what size it is. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what happens in schools, but school buildings. Gaines Elementary is significantly underutilized, yet every single room in that building has things in it and has, at some point in the day, someone using it. And so that is also the case at Deke Elementary School and at Cyrene. So at one time, and Mr. Heatherton, you were a principal at Moorish back, 10, 15 years ago. How many students did you run at that time in that building?
8 years ago was the last time I was at Moorish. We ran, on average, 480 to 490. Our highest peak was 515. 2 years after we hit 515, Elms crossed over 500. So at one point, there were 1,000 kids just between Elms and Moorish.
So, from this concept of there's not room at Gaines, or there's not room at Deke Elementary School, let's just take that one, which is the same footprint as Elms and as Moorish. We're running under 300 students there, and it has the capacity to run up to probably 525 to 550 in that range. So right now, they're significantly underutilized in terms of space. Now, that doesn't mean that every room in that building isn't used. No different than if you had a storage space, you'd fill it up no matter what size it was. So we have, say, a person that's doing a special education classroom, and they meet with 3 or 4 students, and they have a 900 square foot classroom, right? So those are spaces that exist. We also have things like, computer labs in some buildings that are no longer necessary with Chromebook carts and the things that we do with kids on, Chromebooks now in that investment. But we still have them because we've had the space. So to say that there's not room, there's absolutely room. I'm not saying that that's the decision that you need to make or anything like that, but just to kind of give that feedback on Ms. Lenae's question. Yes, there is room to absorb those students. Cyrene would essentially, Cyrene has a room where it's being used as storage right now. So we would be clearing out some of that, and it would be repurposed to another.
When you say a room, Ben, I'm not interrupting you, but is that a classroom? Because I took a tour personally.
Yeah.
I don't know if the board knew. I went and did a surprise tour. I wanted to look at all those rooms.
A special education teacher right now is teaching in a 900 square foot classroom, and they would be moving to a smaller room that's being used as storage, which it has been historically when Cyrene was much larger building as well. Because Cyrene at one time had much more students there as well. So I'm just trying to make sure you have the information that there is plenty of room physically in the buildings, in those 2 spaces.
My impression was when I walked through the buildings the other day on like a little surprise visit, I wanted to catch everybody just to see how the operation was during the day without a planned board member coming through. There was 3 or 4 rooms, according to the principals, that they said they have made preparation, no matter what the board does. They were very smart, and they're like, hey, we're doing whatever you want. They had some luxury space, meaning that they turned some of the classrooms into like a full-scale library, a tech center, an art center, and I've talked to other districts, and they do those on carts, like we used to do back in the day anyways, when the schools were more full. So they're not, and my thing was I didn't want to take anything away from the kids because I liked the way the operation ran there. I was totally impressed with Deke and Cyrene, and they did have luxury. Like you said, they filled up rooms. They had an arts room. They had a tech room. And those were normally classrooms that they said, hey, Chuck, we had the space, so they utilized it the best they could at the time. But I like that. I like you having the extra space for the kids. I like the kids having the extra space. That's what tore me on, having the extra space. But I think we could have extra space by keeping Gaines maybe K-5 with the options that Brian talked about. Now comes the question, how much more is that going to cost? And where are we at? Because it's pretty simple. You take your students times your money, which you've done for us last month, times our students. Are we still in the black or are we in the red?
Yep. So the decision that you have to make relative to whether or not you're going to run K-5 is a decision that's financially independent of those other variables. So what I mean by that is that if, let's say we were to, because one of the options that was discussed was possibly having special education students go out there. We pay a set amount of money for those students to be educated, and they have in those self-contained settings a number of support staff that support them. So if those people were just relocated out to Gaines, it would provide another place for them, so you could move them out there, but it doesn't do anything to the cost equation. Because we already pay for those services. So now if you want to talk about expanding early childhood, that's a different situation, because when you expand early childhood, as we talked about at academic achievement, there's a significant investment in Lansing into GSRP, Head Start, some of those others, and so those are grant-funded programs. So those can become more self-sustaining. So anything can be done, but it just depends on what your goal is and what, situation you're trying to solve.
So when you say expand early learning, do you mean stopping K-5 in favor of an early learning center essentially, or adding it on to what's already there?
I'm not suggesting either of those. I'm not trying to give you a recommendation in either of those.
I'm just trying to clarify what we're talking about.
What I'm saying is that if you put K-5 as it's currently structured in the building, in a couple years, that number will drop below 100, potentially. And so the reality is that is why this discussion was initiated to begin with. So the decision really needs to be clear, and I think there's, what I'm hearing, some good conversation about, we're just going to invest that way, and that's okay, right? So we're going to invest that way, and we know that financially is a structural thing over here, but as we've said 1,000 times, it's not just a financial decision. So you make that decision to say that's how you want to invest. Now, early childhood, again, is a totally separate equation. It doesn't impact anything to do with K-5. So let's say you chose to continue K-5 and add different things. You could do early childhood in addition to that, but it doesn't solve the K-5 issue. If you decide to discontinue K-5, yet I'm hearing that consensus is you want to keep the building open, certainly you could add and expand early childhood services there, and that then could become self-sustaining from the perspective of grants, because those GSRP funds are funded through slots, those GSRP funds can cover building costs, and then you'd have that potentially would be viable long-term from the standpoint of, and then depending on where your K-5 population was, whether it was in the building or out of the building, you could make decisions at that point. So I'm not trying to give a recommendation one way or another, I'm just giving you the information that the K-5 situation is what it is, and if you add early learning services in there, you could do that coinciding with K-5, or you could do that independently even if K-5 was operating in different buildings.
Okay, let me ask my fellow board members something. I want to try to get another consensus here. Yes or no question, do we want to increase investment? Yes or no? Investment into the school, so we'd be potentially adding a principal.
I think you have to go back first to say whether we're keeping K-5 there or not. Am I wrong?
No, I think that's exactly it.
Why?
Because we don't need the extra resources if the decision is to not continue.
Well, fair enough, but, okay, no, good point. So do we want to continue a education program out there in the K-5 or K-2 setting?
Some kind of elementary.
Some sort of elementary learning.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah, it's a bit wording.
So yes or no, do we want to continue some sort of elementary learning out there? I say yes.
I think we need to define elementary learning, and I'm going to let this very patient person next to me, Alyssa, who's wanted to comment, make her comments.
So I'm not sure if I'm going to comment exactly on what Jack just asked, but what I was planning to share Those of you who know, I've worked for a statewide early childhood organization for 12 years. So as we look at our literacy rates across the district, they're too low, in my opinion, and we've been talking about that in strategic planning. And of course, COVID has impacted that as well. There's a new research study just came out that babies born during COVID are talking later. So this is going to be an issue that continues. So right now, correct me if I'm wrong, the state is going to fund more early childhood slots.
Yes.
Currently, Little Dragons is full with a waiting list. Is that correct? So I guess one thing I'm very interested in, regardless of K-5 at Gaines, is that we maximize the opportunity to get more early childhood across the district, either in a model that's an early childhood center, one option proposed here, or spread throughout the district, because I think it would be a travesty to not take those easy dollars that we're ready for and that would help all families with young children. Ideally, they're going to expand the eligibility so more and more people can take advantage of that, get them into the Swartz Creek family, and then begin their educational journey with us. So that's one thing I'm very clear about. My concern is also, and I hate to talk about money because I know that isn't the only consideration, and I can see all sides of this, so I don't want anyone to think on this board that I've made a decision one way or the other, because I really haven't, truthfully. I was looking forward to this conversation. If we continue K-5, I could see that as an option for, as what's been talked about today. As you know, I'd like a traditional K-5 option. I personally wouldn't choose that for my children, but that's me. I don't want to think about what I would do. I want to think about the district. So that's could be a viable option. I do worry about the enrollment numbers, unless there is some kind of retransportation, which I agree with Chuck, I'm not sure is a good option. So I think we've talked about before that we're not anticipating numbers to increase, so we will have probably that same issue. I also am thinking about the money that could be saved if there wasn't K-5 there. And I know this isn't popular with this group here, in the audience, so I just I'm trying to be very analytical on this and not emotional. Because we would have 4 principals instead of 5, we would have, if you increase student class sizes, which I know hardly anyone is a fan of, but even if it's by a student or 2, you can integrate most students into the existing structure while still maintaining the staff, but then you would save money through attrition as teachers retire or leave, we maybe wouldn't have to rehire. So there would be a projected savings. I heard someone here say $250,000. I've heard up to $500,000. And the reason why I bring that up is that we need things like more instructional coaches. We need things like maybe more social workers. We need things like that. We're lucky to have COVID funds right now and an increased per pupil allowance. I'm not sure if that's going to continue, the per pupil allowance. This inflation, the money that's coming, it's gonna go down at some point is my projection. How much, I have no idea. So anyway, when I think about K-5, I think about the pros as being a nice option for parents who want that experience. It's a great school. My kids went through there. They loved it. Mrs. Atherton was their teacher. So it pains me to think about that community not having an elementary school there, but I also think about the whole district and all the things we're trying to do with supporting all children, and I do think about the financial piece of it. Again, I truthfully don't know which way I'm leaning. I'm really looking forward to additional comments, but that's where my head's at right now.
So let's ask, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
I was just going to ask a question. I don't know if Alyssa, you can speak to this, or, definitely I would think Rod and Ben can answer, but in the event that we were to, from a licensing perspective, for early childhood versus elementary, do you have to have 2 different levels of supervision in one building?
No, so as an early childhood center, licensing, so they have statewide licensing boards, that a officer essentially that comes through, and they're looking at all sorts of different things, square footage and furniture you have there, the different nuances within the classroom. And so we actually have previously been certified to run a GSRP classroom out at Gaines. It's very feasible with the increase, you could increase those regardless of the K-5 equation. And so you would actually be able to license multiple spaces in that building, fully confident in that. We already have Head Start licensed there and are operating and running. So you could absolutely do that. And, you know, in the question on supervision, I mean, obviously in those situations, if you were running it as K-5 and early childhood, you would need to have a principal there, and that would be pretty clear. If you were running it as only early childhood, then you'd be looking at a slightly different role. You'd be looking at an early childhood director or coordinator of sorts, and somebody that could, you know, support, that's really geared towards that age group of children that are working together.
Can you do elementary with early childhood and just have a principal oversee the entire building?
You could, yes. And, you know, in those situations, you would have different, you know, for example, when the licensing officer comes out, they would say, okay, well, you know, these children need to not commingle with these children at different times, and there'd be different things relative to the playground, and those things would exist, but, you know, yes, a principal could do.
You don't have to have an early childhood director in the building.
You don't, although, you know, in that situation, you'd probably be looking for a principal that had that type of early childhood experience if you were gonna go in that route.
I get it. Go ahead, Alicia.
I just want to make sure we were clear.
So we could,
legally and
we could split that cost then, is what you're kind of hedging to. Because if we had a principal, could some of that grant money then be utilized because she or he is doing both jobs? So that would offset some of the cost for the district for us paying the $120,000 for a principal. Is that?
That is mostly accurate, yes. You would be able to offset a portion, although in that scenario, it would be a small portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we currently have any principals that are early childhood certified like that?
Mr. Heatherton, do you know that answer? I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
I don't hear no volunteers out there.
I don't believe so, no.
None, okay.
But you would have to be, in that scenario, you'd be hiring another person anyway. So, you know, that would be probably something you're looking for. So if you're doing it as an early childhood center, K-5 is not there, then you're posting and looking for a childhood person. If you're keeping K-5 there, you're looking for a principal with hopefully some elementary or early elementary experience.
And some of that cost to be offset by our grant money for it.
A portion.
A portion. So that would.
Not a whole lot.
No, I don't know. Is there a way to, without jumping into contracts, is there a way to have an assistant vice principal or a vice principal that's kind of a floater that's there because it's not so big, and they could float around and help Katie instead of back and forth, or is that even feasible, or is that going to contract issues with the employee's contract?
It doesn't have any contract issues. It just becomes a little bit, problematic from the standpoint of, you know, the cost differential is not that great between those.
All right,
so.
I didn't know what the, okay.
Okay, so let me ask this question. Yes or no, do we want to implement some form of early childhood learning out at Gaines Elementary?
Great question. Yes.
Yes.
I do. I think we all want that.
That's probably one of the greatest needs that this district has right now, is offering those opportunities to our young children, and even outside of COVID.
Right.
We needed that, right?
And then on top of that, I think it's just, I will say, I think it's a fantastic marketing opportunity too, because we will get, when licensed as that and open for those grant-funded programs, we're going to get students that aren't necessarily in district either, who are assigned to that school. So we're bringing in other individuals too into the district to appreciate and realize the great things that we do within Swartz Creek.
Well, and to be clear, there is already some early childhood programming there. So are we saying continue that or potentially expand it if there's?
I'm asking expand it to Gaines. And I'm getting a yes from everyone I'm seeing. So now follow-up question to that. do we continue K through 5 education, or do we continue K through 5 or K through 2, some form of elementary education at Gaines Elementary? That's the next question. I say yes.
Jack, I'm still struggling with how restricting it to K2 or K or 3-5 would solve the issue. And I have serious concerns about the potential for declining enrollment based on what we've seen and what we've heard. And if that declines much more, you know, what's the plan then? You expand capacity of another program, but that program won't make up for the loss in the revenue from the children that might leave the district or decline over time. So I'm struggling with, number one, how K2 or 3-5 would be a solution. But I'm also struggling with, you know, the risk of having a K5 building with declining enrollment versus, and having to have additional resources that are not inexpensive, very valuable, but not inexpensive, and versus looking at using that building for, say, as an early childhood center. And I know that's not a popular conversation, but we have to look at that longer term, or we're going to be back here again talking about it when we lose another 20, 30 students.
And I think if we look at it, if I'm looking right now, short term, if we say to families, we're going to make the investment and we're going to, let's add in the early childhood center, or learning at least, and we give them all the resources, I think we will see at least a bump, an increase in the short term in enrollment, which long term would give us more enrollment, I think.
Be nice to have a crystal ball, wouldn't it?
Sure, it would.
Carrie, if I may for a minute. Jack, at the last meeting, you said something so heartfelt, and it has stuck with me since. And that was, how do I make a prudent decision? And I really love the word prudent, like, in thinking about it. And even looked it up again, you know, and it is acting with or showing care or thought for the future. And short term, I think if we have K5, I can't think of another word except appeases in a way a situation and people's feelings and sentiments. As the district as a whole, I think about a few things. I am so excited when I think about Gaines being an early childhood development center. If our focus and our concern is about the kids of our district, our whole district, right? And we're helping kids not just when they come in as kindergartners or early 5s, we're helping them. We have the opportunity to help even more kids who are 3 and 4 years old. So when they come into our lower elementary schools, right, that they are better prepared. That is one of the most exciting things to me that we could and should do as a district. To go back to the K5, you know, you as well were one of the ones talking about why we've been having this discussion for nearly a year, to not kick this can down the road. Based on these numbers, in 3 years, less than 3 years, Gaines will lose the equivalent of an entire class. Their third, fourth, and fifth grade are nearly 75 kids total. Kindergarten, first and second are 55 kids. And I understand a lot of the different concerns. I also know that this was an issue prior to the pandemic. And there's the thought that, you know what, that as families go out and take their kids out for early childhood education to Gaines, it becomes more attractive to more families. And Chuck, you were the one that said, we shouldn't close that building down, we should keep it open. So if we need to expand, we could go back there. Just because if we don't continue K5 now, because for multiple reasons, it affects our entire district, not just financially. It affects our other kids and all of our other schools as well. And to Alyssa's point about with those savings, what other amazing things could we do for the kids that we call now that even are the Gaines kids, but you know what they are? They're Swartz Creek kids. You know, I think about, and I hear people say, and I very much appreciate it, and I agree. I agree that Gaines is a family. You know what? I also know that Swartz Creek is a family. I know our district is a family. I know my daughters went to Moorish, and all the emails that I've gotten about what people's experiences are with their kids out at Gaines, I felt the same way at Moorish. You know, I think about, and I said this for the upper and lower elementary split as well. Having the house isn't what makes the home, it's the people. And we are a family in this district, right? And we are trying to make the best home that we can for our kids. And it is a hard thing to do, and it is heartbreaking to think about. Yet, again, I think it is the prudent decision to bring those kids into Cyrene and Deep. And with the hope and the willingness that if we get back up to a level that we've got a ton of kids coming in and those early childhood kids are flooding our district and we need more capacity, that we have it available at Gaines. Our staff at the schools that they're at now, the staff that are at Gaines will make sure if we make that transition that our kids are well taken care of. Because they've done it up to this point, and I have no reason to think they wouldn't continue to do it. I think that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Jessica, well said.
Would there be a possibility to at least let the students who are currently there finish through Gaines? Could that be a possibility at all?
Wait, like a kindergartner?
So
No.
if we were going to discontinue K-5, would it be possible to at least let those families that are there currently go through and finish Gaines? If I'm hearing correctly, unfortunately, K-5 isn't long-term viable. Is that what I'm hearing?
Harry? A couple things, as I'm thinking about this early childhood development absolutely is the right thing to do, right? We all agree with that. Those families are gonna bring other siblings in, kindergartners, first, second, third, fourth, in district at choice. Even if they were outside our district, they could be bringing in siblings, Shiawassee, from other school districts, as an in-district choice. Also, another big thing, as I look at this, we've been suffering for 2 years now with the pandemic. We need to stabilize. I'm thinking, let's get this together, let's roll it out, and as we roll out this pandemic, hopefully it's gonna go away, and we will stabilize, and we will be a lot healthier. So I think I think there will be more people coming to Gaines. Pandemic stabilizes, and I think through this early childhood development center, it's gonna bring siblings from other districts, or even our school system. They're gonna bring siblings with them.
I think Brian raises a good point. Let's say we continue K-5, we put in an early childhood education sector or section. If we put that in there, that's bringing in families. And that brings in district families, out-of-district families. It opens Gaines to more people and more students and more children who could go there for that early childhood center and say, you know what, this is nice. I want to stay here through elementary school. I want my family to go here. And these families could say that as well, and we could see as well that happen. But we won't know unless we try it.
When they see that blue ribbon education that Gaines has, that could even produce more and bring more in. All of these things are good. We talked about marketing. All of these things are good. Early childhood development,
So what you're saying is that if we close K-5 and do early childhood developing, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, you're saying if the district goes that route, that we might be shooting ourselves for the K-5 kids that might want to go there because they already see those kids there, and they say, oh, what a great program, I'm going to bring a sibling in from outside the district into here where I'm bringing my early childhood to help increase that number a little bit.
I'm saying
Is that-
keep the K through 5
Yep.
open. And as parents are dropping their child off.
Right, it's gonna help them.
The pre-5, the pre-4, whatever it is, they're gonna bring a sibling in, or maybe 2 siblings.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I have a comment though that I want
I'm good with
my
that.
fellow board members to consider as well. We all struggle, and we've had multiple conversations about, in our current structure, that unfortunately we are doing a disservice to that school in the fact that it is a small volume of students, and we don't support them to the level that the remainder of our elementary schools get supported. Yet we're considering continuing to provide that, a different structure than the remainder of our district has. And I say that because this was a discussion and a conversation when we tackled the concept of early and, lower and upper elementary. So we've redesigned our educational structure at the elementary level, yet we have a subset still that are not getting the consistency that we have put into place in the remainder of the district. And to Jessica's point, I look at it as we're either talking about a school or we're talking about the district. And to have one subset population within our entire district that is served at a completely different, it's served with a different function than everything else that we do. And I mean, to that level, you can even say when they do make that transition, they're not the same as the other elementary students because they haven't been in the same environment with those same kids getting the same services. And that can be part, I mean, I'm assuming could be part of the transitional issue we have at the middle school level as well. It's different services provided to a different group of students that were not consistent across the district. It was a conversation we had when we discussed how we were going to roll out upper and lower, and I think it's still a conversation now. If we continue in that structure, why are we doing something different for this small population of students that we aren't doing across the board?
Thanks for that, Alicia. And I want to comment on what you said, Brian. If we were to do an early childhood program there or expand it, and families came to that school, but to our district for those services, they're not necessarily going to choose that community or choose that school. They might live somewhere else and go to a different elementary school. So long-term, that doesn't necessarily solve our concern of declining enrollment if we were to keep a K-5 structure. So although I appreciate your comments and the sentiment, it doesn't necessarily, they could come here, but they don't necessarily go there or choose there or live there. And so we're back to talking about, if you can't stem the declining enrollment, what are our other viable alternatives?
But we'll never know unless we try. If we never put in an early childhood center and keep K-5, how would we ever know? We couldn't. If we shut down K through 5, as soon as we open the...
We're not shutting it down, we have it somewhere else.
Excuse me. If we say we want to add this early childhood part, and that gives that ability to show more families, that elementary school, how could we ever know that more students won't be going there, more students within the district wouldn't be going there? If we never try, how would we ever know that it's going to fail?
Jack, we've been trying since 2015. There's been a conversation ongoing since 2015 and when we're looking at the district. And it's unfortunate. The birth rate is down, people have moved away. For whatever reason, they've chosen to take their children out of the school. We've heard a lot of different comments from a lot of different folks in the community, but it's continuing to decline. And I think that it's incumbent on us as a board to look at that, take that into consideration. You know, we have several options here. I appreciate you bringing forward the K-2 and the 3-5. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we needed a laundry list of ideas. But, you know, the option is an example. We keep coming back to early childhood. That's an option that would be, it's much needed for our students, even more so than in the past, post-pandemic. We don't have enough slots for families. They're expanding the eligibility for families to be able to participate in some of these programs, which is amazing. Before, there was very limited participation based on your income. So they're expanding the capacity. The legislature, the state is looking at funding that we may not have seen before, that it would be great to have the opportunity to share with our community. So doing that and hoping for the best, I still think, to Jessica's point, is kicking the can down the road. And those are hard things to say. But I think that we have to look at options that, unless you want to be back here in a year and say, we can't do this any longer.
Well, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's around 130 students out in Gaines, well, student-aged children out in Gaines, who could be going to Gaines Elementary that aren't. Am I incorrect there?
We don't know the exact number, but I believe that number is at least that high, yes.
It's at least that.
Yep.
If we say today that we're going to continue Gaines Elementary 3 through 5, and we're going to add on an early development, early education center, we're telling those families that might be out there saying, and this does happen, they're saying, I'm not going to go because the board is talking about closing Gaines. Well, if we say today, let's keep it K through 5 and add on this early learning center, you're telling those families, no, come here. We want you. We are saying to you today, we want you. But there's potentially at least 100 or more people out there that are willing to come if we say to them, if we commit to them, we are willing to keep K through 5.
So Jack, to quote you from the last meeting, you said, what does the number need to be? So I'm going to ask you that question. What would the number need to get to? Because the other thing I've been thinking about, and again, I'm still not sure here where I'm at, is the uncertainty. The uncertainty that families have been under related to this. I mean, we've all gotten comments about wanting to keep it open. I don't know about all of you. I've gotten about equal the number of comments from people in the community who think it's time to close. They don't talk publicly, but they're there. Now, I could get on board with a keep K-5 open with early childhood and see how it goes, but I do think there's still then going to be some uncertainty, and the board probably just needs to know that it could be likely, I hope I'm wrong, but it could be very likely that this comes back for more discussion and the uncertainty continues. That's my struggle with it. And I know it's hard because it's like we want to bet on it, but truthfully, all school districts are seeing decreases. It may geographically make sense for us to have 5 buildings because of how wide our geographic spread is. But as far as districts our size, no one our size has this many elementary buildings. And so if we choose to keep it open, that means we're choosing to invest more in that K-5 structure and betting on it, which, we can choose to do that. I think I likely won't be on this board, but I think it'll come back within a couple of years or so. So I guess I go back to your question. What does the number need to get to? Because I feel like we've been holding this community in kind of the in-between space for a long, long time. And I don't know if even a decision on K-5 can provide the certainty that it'll be supported no matter what the enrollment. It feels like any board that is doing its due diligence has to either pick a number or have a time where it does have to be relooked at. So what is the number, Jack?
I'll give you two answers to this, actually. My first answer would be less than 100, truly, I think that's time. At that point, you're saying, you know, we're going to keep this building open with 10 students in it, and we'll run it until we have one. At that point, you either need to say cut it or run it till it's a one classroom schoolhouse. So 100, or if they're operating in the red. Currently, they're not, to be fair to them, and I understand they did get a bump. What happens when that goes away? Well, then that would need to be the discussion at the time. So my thought is this: what if we put in that early learning center? We kept it K-5. We say 5 years. 5 years, and if it's the same or lower, that's the cut. If not, if it's increased, because how are we going to know if we don't do it? If in 5 years that number is 160, great, but we wouldn't know unless we get there. My thought is, what if we say today, let's continue K-5. Let's put that time on it to revisit this in 5 years or 3 years. To give it, so we can at least take a look and say, you know what? There is something to this. We did bring in more students, or we lost a couple students, at which point, then we say, yep, that's it. We gave you the chance, we put everything in our hearts into this, but I think we should at least say, you know what? Let's add this early learning center, keep K-5, and let's put a time limit to come back so we can say, you know what, enrollment hasn't increased, done. Or enrollment has increased, and then we can look at new options. Or if enrollment decreases, again, done. But we'll never know unless we try.
So Jack, we've talked previously about what that number looks like. And I think we talked about 200 would be where we would consider the district's, I don't want to say break-even point, but point where we wouldn't have these conversations. And 7 years ago, was it 7 years ago? Yeah. There were 240 students there. So we were just above that line. We are far below the 200 line right now. And to go below 100, I don't even know how we could justify sustaining that program. So, I don't know. It's, these are difficult conversations to have. I think that I'm sensing some consensus that there's a focus on early childhood education, that there's some agreement there, that if we were to do anything, that's something that we need to invest in. I think the next question that we have before us is whether we continue with a K-5 model there or not.
Can I pose some questions with that? I think these are the questions that we are hopefully each asking ourselves. And I guess I am kind of asking my fellow board members. I don't know if you want to say that publicly or you know your thoughts in your head, but I think there's two questions that you do need to ask. If you are inclined to continue the K-5 model in that building, why? Like, what's driving that thought and what's driving that, or whether it's emotion or data or whatever that piece is, why that decision? And then the other question is, why not discontinue that option when we have those services elsewhere? We have means of getting them to the other schools. We're not stopping their education. We're providing it in a different building. But why to both of those? Why would you not send them somewhere else? Or why would you keep them there? One of those I know we hear often is, we don't want the children, I don't want my children or somebody doesn't want the children shuttled so far. The fifth grader that has to get shuttled now to a different elementary school in 1 year is still going to get shuttled to the middle school, which is right down the road. Not any different of a distance. That's something to consider. Or why are we keeping it open? So, it's just questions to ask yourself.
If we're talking about the shuttling, if we were to shut down K through 5, we're going to ask them to transport their kids this distance, which we have.
We will still do that.
Hold on, please. We have said, it's a long drive to Gaines. It's a long drive back. They're just going to go to other districts. We've got students out there. We do. And if we're going to say to them that we're not going to run K-5, we will lose half, at a minimum, of those students. I understand that's 60, 70 maybe. That's a chunk. And then we're going to lose those students that could have potentially gone to Gaines. So why? Because how are we going to ask our Gaines parents to transport their kids in when we've been saying to them it's a far drive?
I guess I'm challenging what do you mean that they have to transport their children in? We would be transporting their children if they want to be on a bus.
Yeah, but...
So they're not driving their kids to the other elementary school?
We're not driving other elementary kids to Gaines. We have not provided that. We haven't. Am I wrong? If we've said to students, we've said to families, if you want to school choice your student to Gaines, drive yourself.
If you want to school choice your child to Morris, you have to drive yourself. That's not any different to any other family in the district.
So we've said over and over, Gaines is a far drive to our families. And that has been maybe one of the reasons we're not getting those school choice to Gaines. It might be a factor. If then we ask them to drive their students into our district, well, that's a double standard.
I'm sorry, who are you asking to drive into the district? I don't know what you mean.
Even if we're busing. It's a far drive. That's what, we have said that. We have.
Am I the only one that's confused? What drive are you talking about?
So Jack, we would provide the transportation for children from Gaines to their respective elementary school. Or the parent could choose to drive the child, much like other parents choose to drive their children to their school. So is that answer your concern?
Would we provide it the opposite way? If a family wanted to go to Gaines.
We don't provide it the opposite for anybody else.
Why?
So we're not going to drive everybody where they just want to go.
So my kids started at Moorish. We moved out into Clayton Township, and our children had a great experience at Moorish. They continued to, we drove them to Moorish every day. And our daycare was right next door too. But we drove them. There was no access to a shuttle from close to our home. In fact, a bus went right by our house but couldn't pick our kids up. But it's a choice that we made as a family, as long as our children were allowed in the choice. So we had an opportunity to go to a different elementary school with transportation, but we chose to do something different. And I think that's what you're saying is, but if you were to take the students from Gaines to Cyrene and Deke, they would have the opportunity to take a bus. Does that help?
What's going to be the cost? Per student, and I mean this legitimately, because currently for Gaines, I think the per student cost per day is around, if I'm incorrect, correct me, but it's almost, yeah, Chuck has it here. Let's see. Per student, daily per student cost from Gaines is $589. From the other two, it's around, we'll just average it $270 per student. How much does that go up?
Yeah, but you're going to take away a significant amount of other expenses.
Yeah. Just to answer your question, the transportation costs are going to remain relatively neutral. Because what you have right now is you have buses driving out, picking kids up on the way out, and then they drop off at the building. The difference would be the buses would be driving out and bringing them back to the other building. So it's relatively the same, in terms of cost and miles.
So I guess I'll ask, do we want to continue K-5, yes or no? I ask my fellow board members. I say yes, and I'd like to see the early childhood added on, as I've stated. So I say yes, we should continue K through 5.
Then we can put it to a motion and vote on it. Yeah, I mean.
That's what we're doing.
I would like to motion that we continue K through 5 education at Gaines Elementary.
So Jack, we're scheduled to talk about that in our board action items. I just want to make sure we've addressed everybody's conversation and discussion here.
But he can make a motion whenever he wants. He can make the motion now if he wants.
As long as it has a second.
Well, make your motion.
Go ahead.
I just did. I motion that we continue K through 5 education at Gaines Elementary with the addition of the Early Childhood Learning Center.
Support.
Any comments or questions? Sure.
And I can have discussion on the motion.
Because with that, Jackie, you made,
Microphone, Jeff.
oh, sorry, thanks. You made a comment about you'd like to keep K-5 out there, but if the enrollment dropped below 100, then we would stop it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So potentially, but you also said at the same time that you would like to, and then with this motion, there is no time frame with it. You said you'd like to tell the community 5 years. Potentially, looking at the numbers right now, we'll hit below 100 within 2 years. So.
Would you like me to put a time frame?
Well, I'm just saying, is that the preparation, or is that the plan to just, because to leave it open-ended again, to say K-5 and early education, I think continues to then push this conversation, maybe every year, potentially every couple of years. And again, at what point is there, again, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say the brakes, or to say that this is no longer viable. Like, at what point, and as well, because if we continue K-5, then does that mean then we really do need to hire a 5th principal? We are not, because didn't we say that we agreed that if we leave Gaines open, we're not doing a half-time principal out there, correct? So we are immediately raising what the cost per student is for Gaines, right? Does that mean that we're, as well, if we leave it K-5 with your motion right now, that then we're adding the special education, the other staff that we talked about adding, and then if we make this vote and we make those changes and we hire a principal for next year, the other thing that you said is if it goes to the red, if we realize by the time the school is getting ready to start in a year, are we prepared to pull the plug on it because it's back in the red?
I would
Or
say,
it goes into the red?
I would say
So-
it's in the red, pull the plug.
So can you maybe amend that to
Okay.
because, again, I think it's important that the community knows at what point does this stop, so we're not giving false hope, if that makes sense. Like, what are those conditions that this does no longer exist in the way that you're proposing?
I don't think.
Does that make sense? or
It
not?
does, but I don't think it's up to us as a board, Jessica. I think that's Ben's job to adjust staffing. Yeah, I mean, and.
But isn't that what he's done? And some of our Gaines families aren't happy with
Well,
that adjustment, right?
you can't have everything. If you have a small school, you may not be able to have all the staffing that you want as some of the larger schools. But that is still, Ben's kind of a victim of his own demise because what he's done is he's adjusted. He's done very well for the district by adjusting it to keep it in the black. So that's gonna be up to him, and you're right, this may be a yearly discussion. It may be a 6-month discussion. It may be a 3-month discussion. But that is going to be an admin thing. We control the finances, but the day-to-day operations, without creating new positions, which he wouldn't be creating new positions, he's just adjusted positions and moved some around to help that particular building run in the black. So he's done a great job for the district in doing that. My concern is that, let's just put it to a vote. He's got a second. It's not got any other details in there. I don't think there needs to be a kill date on there. I don't think it needs to be anything more than that. And if it goes sideways, then we come back and we say, hey, we're getting rid of it. And I have no problem with getting rid of it or keeping it, but I want to get it to a vote, and he's made a legitimate, motion. And I can see this going on for 6 or 7 hours. And I just, and we've all brought up good points, bad points.
Can I amend?
Different points. There's been no bad points, but there's been different points on there. And to put a kill date on there or a number, who knows? Maybe it's running with 80 kids and we've got no principal there and 1 secretary and 3 split classes, but it's running great and we're in the black. I don't know that. But that's what we address as a board every time we have a meeting.
Can I either amend my motion or rescind and then re-motion?
Sure.
Let's carry.
So
Yes.
do I need to amend or rescind?
Why don't you amend whatever it is that you originally said, and read what you originally said and then amend it.
Okay, so I would like to withdraw my motion, my first motion, simply to keep K-5 and add the Early Childhood Learning Center. I would like to motion now, we keep K-5, add the Early Childhood Learning Center, add a full-time principal with the contingencies. If the budget goes in the red, we shut down Gaines. If
We don't want to shut down games.
Yeah, you don't want to shut.
we discontinue K through 5. If there is less than 100 students total in K through 5 at Gaines, we also end K through 5 at Gaines Elementary.
Could I ask you to say or
Where?
or less than 100 students?
Okay, yes, or less than 100 students.
I
So
mean,
if-
that seems more reasonable than and.
Yes, if
You're right, Karen.
the budget goes into the red, K through 5 ends at Gaines Elementary. Or if there is less than 100 students total in K through 5 at Gaines, we end K through 5.
So, are you,
Yeah, I'm looking at Carrie just to.
So, did you get that, Sue? I want to make Sue.
I know it's a lot.
The enrollment part, if the enrollment drops to 100?
Below 100
Below 100, we end K-5.
at Gaines, yes.
Or if the budget goes in the red, we end K-5. I think so.
are you saying, did you just say then, if those conditions are hit, that is something the administration then could make that decision, or does that come back to the board for a vote? Because then, does
It would
prolong
still
the-
come back to, I didn't want to interfere with the admin's job of delegating, who should be working where. If it's his motion, I'm not, gonna step on it. The only question I ask is that parliamentary procedure, I'm 99% sure on this, that we actually have to have a vote for him to withdraw his motion. And then, I don't know if that's true or not, Carrie, you might know more about it than me.
So
Yeah.
typically, the way I handle it, and
Yeah.
it'll be on boards, is that you ask the person
If they are
Okay,
willing
all
to
right.
amend.
Okay. Because there was a second, that's
Right,
why I
right.
asked
So,
that.
but I haven't asked you yet if you're
Yeah.
going to support whatever he's stating. I want to make sure we're clear on what his motion is, and then if you're still willing to support it.
I don't know if I'm clear on his motion.
Okay, so,
I like
so-
yeah.
so Jack, could you please do us the favor of reading it again?
The
I want to
motion,
make sure Sue has it all too.
the motion is that we keep K through 5 at Gaines, we add the Early Childhood Learning Center at Gaines, we add a full-time principal. If Gaines' budget goes into the red, K through 5 ends, or if there are less than 100 students, K through 5 ends.
Is it at any point in the year that the number goes below 100 that it's like, then the decision is made for the next school year? I'm not trying to be super picky, but it could be at any point a budget goes into red or 100 students, so.
I think it would have to be at the end of that school year.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
All right, so with that, Chuck, I'll leave it up to you whether you want to support that or not, the amended motion. And if not, then we can solicit another support.
I'm not saying anything. I don't like that particular motion because I think the number's too low. That's ridiculous.
Discussion of, what do you mean the numbers are too low?
Well, there's not. They asked me to support that particular motion. I supported the first one, and I probably shouldn't have murmured it, but we could go in the red very quickly and be upside down, taking money from somewhere else. And I wanted it open, so if something happened, it would just come back to the board, you know. And I know it's a pain if it comes back every 2 months or 3 months, but that's what we're here for. That's our job. I don't mind doing it. I don't mind staying several hours and discussing it and making hard decisions. I didn't support his motion, so it's discussion. I've only been here for 3 years. And it's been kicked down the road for 10 years. And it's not fair for me to make a decision for the district. I want a little bit more time to digest it. It really hasn't come up over COVID for the last 2 years. We've had COVID. And my personal feelings are I'd like to keep K-5 open, but I know that we may not be able to do that long-term. I think we can do that short-term, but I don't want to put the district in a financial burden. I want to see it thrive, and I don't like a number attached to it, because we could have 90 kids there, and it could be in the black, if it's run right. Probably not, but it could be. Ben, like I said, Ben's a victim of his own demise, because he's come up with some good options to help the district, so that's why I'm not supporting that particular one. I don't like, yeah.
And to be fair, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but
the motion
you could make a motion, we could all vote on it and say, yes, if it goes in the red, but, so then we've all approved that, and then it comes before the next board when it's in the red, and they opt to put a different motion on the table and completely change it anyway. So we can't make a guarantee of what happens in the future like that, because any other board can make a different decision at that point. Am I wrong? So, I mean, they can uphold what we vote on, or they can change it. That's always an option out there. So I don't agree with the stipulations added, but.
So we don't have support for your motion.
What if we just kept it broad again? What if I re-motion that we keep K-5 and add the Early Childhood Learning Center?
We have to do parliamentary procedure.
All right,
The vote was not, the motion was not supported, so that particular motion dies on the vine. It goes back to open discussion, and then we either have another motion, and you can not re-motion, now you can make another motion.
Well, you're right, though. Another board could absolutely change what we do, but that's the nature of boards. We could say today that we want to at least try this, and then another board dies.
I want the public to understand we can't make a commitment on duration.
So it seems like what we're struggling with, or maybe I'm just struggling with, but is whether we take a chance and a risk. Because I hear at least 3, I think, fellow board members, and I like a risk, I'll just say. But the analytical side of me says it's like a low chance. However, I don't like that this vote may come down to like a half and half, because then to me, that's troubling, because and I'm not judging anyone. I think it means, well, one, I think all of us know, I feel very confident about this because I really respect everyone on this board. We're here to think about the whole district, think about the viability of the whole district, and I do believe even with all the different counterpoints, everyone's thinking about that. So to me, it's a bit troubling to make a rash decision about closing something when we don't feel, not that we would ever get 100% consensus, but that there seems to be such a divide. So to me, the decision is about, do we want to take a chance or do we not? I don't know where I'm landing on that. I see both sides of it. The data right now is troubling. I think the factor for me that's making me think about that data is COVID, the timing and such. Taking a chance means that this conversation will likely continue, and I don't like that for the community because I feel like they're in gray zone.
Yeah. And Alyssa, remember I made a comment last month about, I'm sorry, I think was it last month we had a meeting, or was it just 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, wow, we're having all these meetings. Is that if we do increase enrollment, that's why I wanted to keep the building open just in case. And Ben made a great point on some of the finites, which I did not know. He says, yeah, if you close the building, then it can't normally be reopened as a school. And I don't want to close that door for this district, but I'm afraid, and I'm not afraid, I'm hoping that we gain more people. You know, some of the districts are also having struggling times, so maybe we get 50 kids in or something. Right. And I'm like, oh geez, we closed that school, now we really screwed ourselves. I don't want that to happen. So I'm kind of with you, Liz. I don't mind taking a chance. I'll make the motion and see if it dies or not. I make a motion, we keep it open, K through 5 for one more year, and with early childhood being installed, and the board revisits it then. Support.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Can I clarify? So, motion.
You can't have discussion on the motion, yeah.
No, I think she's clarifying.
I just want you to reread the motion.
Okay, you made a motion that we keep it open for one more year, the K through 5, with the early childhood.
Again, I don't want the timeline on there. But.
Is that correct?
That's my motion, correct.
Did you get Brian's support? Yeah, thank you.
Jessica Lenave.
Yes.
Alyssa Parks.
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
Leisha Gardner.
No.
John Sayer.
Yes.
Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
Carrie Germain.
No.
Five yes, 2 no.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thanks to all of the board members for the discussion. All right, I'm going to suggest that we take a 7-minute break. 5's never enough. Yes. It is. 7 minutes.
Something happened tomorrow.
Come here. You say he works at your school? No, not he. I said he looks like there's a guy that looks like him that works at your school. You said he. No. I said there's a guy that looks like him that works at your school. What? How's it going? I want to run. It was fun, wasn't
Remember this, oh, you don't vote.
She's like, I know she's like, right. I think I was trying, like, my heart was, I was like nervous for her. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I freaking out high? Yeah. Right. How are you? Please. Appropriate. My last two really was. Always together. It's like, force the one to not always talk for the other. Right. Yeah.
All right, Travis, are we good? All right. Thanks, everybody, for the break. We are now going to go back into our session. The next on our agenda, we've already accomplished the board action item A. Moving on to approval of IDEA full funding resolution. Ben?
Yeah, this is a resolution that's being supported by public schools all over Michigan, really asking Congress and the federal government to fully support IDEA. IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and that essentially funds our special education services. And those across the country are really funded significantly lower. So this resolution is just in support of the Full Funding Act from IDEA. And we just would ask for your support in that so that we can get the resources from those grants federally to support our children with disabilities.
And the full resolution is in your packet. I would entertain a motion for approval. So moved. Okay, I support. I completely missed who that was. Was that Jack or Jack? Chuck? Okay.
I actually moved it to support Brian.
Okay, we're gonna say Chuck and Brian. Any comments or questions? All right, I don't see any financial connection for us directly, or do you consider this a financial? This is just our resolution for support. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that an aye? Opposed?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Aye for the,
All right.
yeah, I was late.
Just want to make sure. All right. Next, we have the approval of the delegate and alternate representatives for the GISD annual budget hearing. I would first ask, are there any volunteers who would like to be the designee and the alternate?
I will.
Jessica, anyone like to be the alternate?
I don't know what this is, I'm sorry. I'm being new here, so I can imagine what it is, but maybe a couple sentences.
The GISD reviews and does a PowerPoint presentation of their budget for the coming year.
And then each
Typically, it's
district
been
is-
approved, at that point when they're showing it, it's usually been approved by the superintendents. I think their board maybe, but they just inform the districts of what their budget is.
And then there's actually a roll call of all the districts to either support or not.
Yeah.
Is it so you have to attend a meeting, basically?
You do have to physically attend, so if Jessica is unable to attend in some regard, the alternate would be there in her stead.
No one else is jumping at this opportunity. I'd be happy to be Jessica's backup.
Okay. It's actually very interesting, but a lot of the information that they will share, they may not have complete information yet, so. Okay, with that, Jessica and Alyssa, I would entertain a motion. So moved. I'm going to take Alicia and
Support.
Brian.
Oh,
Okay. What did you say, Chuck?
No, I don't know how they beat me.
He just wants to
but
make
okay.
sure it's extra supported.
Yeah.
Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approve Jessica LaNeve as delegate and Alyssa Parks as alternate representative for GISD annual budget hearing as presented. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, next we have the approval of the Food Service Management Company bid proposal recommendation.
This is a resolution that has to be done every 5 years from the Michigan Department of Education. Essentially, we have to go out and make sure that we're bidding this fully. It's an extremely arduous process, so I appreciate Ms. Gray and her work in pulling all of that together. We did have 3 bids. The low bidder was Chartwell's, who happens to be our current provider, and that recommendation is there for your approval this evening.
With that, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Support. Jack? Jessica? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the Food Service Management Company to Chartwell's, did I say bid? To Chartwell's with a total bid price of $806,865.28 for the 2022-2023 school as presented. Any comments or questions? If not, Sue, can you do roll call, please?
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
John Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion passes, thank you. Next, we have the approval of the lawn care services bid proposal recommendation. Ben?
This is for our lawn care service contract. We had multiple bidders. We talked about this at Finance and Building and Site, and the current providers happen to also be the low bidder. And I believe we solicited 13 different vendors. We had, I believe, 3 that put in bids, and so that approval is there for you to consider this evening.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion.
So, support, I'm sorry, so moved.
Brian?
Support.
Alyssa? Okay, any comments or questions? Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the lawn care services to Tees Lawn Care and Snow Removal with a total bid price of $2,395 per visit as presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Yes.
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
Carrie Germain,
Yes.
John Sayer,
Yes.
Alyssa Parks,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey,
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Yes.
7 yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next, we have an opportunity for public comment. Again, anyone who wants to address the board, please step up to the podium, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
Okay,
Hi,
yep,
Karen.
Karen Hinspeter, I'm a Gain Township's resident. First, I just want to say thank you for taking that risk to keep our school open for another year. And I'm really excited about the child development program that's coming. I'm a former licensed daycare operator in my home. I was that for 30 years, and I know there's a need. I never had to advertise in my home for daycare. I was always full. And I know that the other people that were doing daycare at the time have retired, as I have myself. So I know there's not much of that in the area. So I think that will bring in a lot of students to our area. Also, I hope that we will also look at other ways to improve that enrollment, that we'll look at some of those other ideas that have been put out there, and that will help. And then lastly, I just want to say that one thing during all the conversation that was going on that I just felt real uneasy with was that it kept coming back that our students at Gaines are not getting the same thing that the other kids are getting at the other schools, and I do not feel that's true whatsoever. We have a social worker, we have a speech therapist, we have a special education teacher. I think our children's needs are being met. I sub at the school, I have grandchildren that go to the school, and I have never thought that they are not getting a good education there. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Anyone else?
Thank you. Don't start my timer. Okay. I love the vote. I love that you put the E5 in there, or the early child care. We have an amazing community around us. Byron, Durand, Argentine. You are correct, there are no early childhood out there. I see that as being a win-win for everybody. But that 1 year on there, you know what's gonna happen? All those early childhood kids are gonna go, oh my gosh, this school is great, and I can't wait to put my kid in kindergarten, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. I'm bringing all my kids here from Byron and Argentine. It's gonna happen. I see it. We talked about Borders, and I wasn't gonna bring up Borders, but I will, only because I saw this wonderful family over here. The Yacklins are here. The Yacklins used to be Gaines family. Where, you live on Oak Hill?
Oak Hill.
Is that still Gaines over there?
Gaines is, it's no longer Gaines.
It's not?
The last student was cut off this year.
Okay.
They said it's not providing busing to Oak Hill.
Fortune Maya?
Fortune Maya.
Okay, so, but I am very thankful that we are still open, and maybe when you talk about that stuff, we talk about looking at bringing some of the Gaines kids that used to go there, like the Gibsons that live on Moorish and between Grambling and Cook Road, and the Charleses that are over there, and the other families that are there that now have to go to Moorish.
Thanks, Melissa.
Finally, thank you, everybody. I know this is a tough thing for all of you on the board. We went through this again 6 years ago. So who am I? I'm Scott Yacklin. I live at 5272 Oak Hill, okay? And has anybody been on the board for more than 20 years? Or 20 years? Okay. So to let you know, I'm just giving you information. I'm not trying to be pushy. My first child started at Gaines Elementary in 2003. Prior to 2003, the borders of Gaines Elementary had already been cut, okay? Through that process, it shrank and it shrank and it shrank, okay? And anybody can tell me, yes, no, it hasn't. Mr. Hetherington changed the bus routes, whatever. We almost literally fought to have our children that were in high school that graduated in 2016 to stay in Gaines and get them busing, okay? So when people say, how do we get more kids to go to Gaines? One is look at what Gaines was before, okay? And the unknowns to you, this situation has been created because that has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, okay? The other thing that I would like to say is I was a coach, right? I would never, ever tell a young man or woman not to play baseball, right? Because that's where my root players come from. And if you cut off an elementary school, you're cutting a root to your tree, okay? So what happened in 2011 is none of anybody's fault. We bought the cage, okay? And at that time, they said, we have to get our enrollment up at Swartz Creek Middle School and High School. So we're gonna attract the city kids that the city of Flint is closing down. We're gonna get those tax dollars and we're gonna bring them here. And I don't care where you're from, you deserve an education, right? Well, now we're at the point of, we bought the cage. We've built on a grant, the center, Performing Arts Center. We keep spending millions of dollars to attract kids here, and we haven't spent a dime on education. Okay? Not a dime. The football field, when Lapeer put that in, spent $8 million. I can't even drive in the damn parking lot without an SUV, but we have a brand new football field. So you may want to make your priority in educating the kids. Gaines is not a financial thing. If you wanted Gaines open, sell the cage, sell a lot of other things we have that is sports oriented.
All right. We have comments and questions from the board.
I have one. I received a multiple of messages, probably, I would say more than 3, less than 10. I know that's broad, but about our parking lot situation, as Mr. Yacklin just brought up, where I've received texts from students that I actually went to school with, but also from parents saying that sometimes their car is even bottoming out. I guess my question to Ben is there anything we can currently do, just quickly, to hold off? Because I know we're redoing it this summer. Is there anything we can do right now, just temporarily, just to get through until summer?
Yep, that's already in the works. That's not new information to anyone. I mean, obviously, if you drive out there, you know that's an issue. To reiterate it again, and I know we've said it multiple times at these meetings, that couldn't have been done before all of the other construction. So if we would have done that, then people would have been up in arms because the lot would have been ripped up by heavy machinery and trucks. So it's been a priority from the beginning of the projects, but it had to be last as a result of the phasing plan. We are looking, you just approved at our last regular board meeting the parking lot system. So those contractors it's already scheduled and work's going to commence. Obviously, they can't do it while we're still in school. There are few options, but they're already in the works to be putting patch in the holes. They're the worst they'll ever be right now because it's right after the snow and they've been plowed all winter. And so they'll be swept again. We have Curb Co come out, they sweep, they get it all cleaned up, and then they will patch them again, and it's still not going to be wonderful. But yes, that's already in the works, and that will commence as soon as the weather is sufficient for it to be able to take.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on that. Carrie, mind if I just ask one? We've been talking about this for years, and we already know what's going to happen, and we appreciate all that. Obviously, you don't want to do construction. You want to go from in out, like when you paint or anything else. We know that. But let me ask, are they doing this after graduation? Is that when they're going to start?
They're starting that project. They're going to try and hold that off until after graduation because we can't house that magnitude of people. They will likely start some of the clearing and demolition of this hill out here.
Right.
So there could potentially be an opportunity for some, if they lay the base gravel down, opportunity for some additional parking. But, yeah.
Good.
Anyone else? Comments?
I would just like to say thank you to everyone here tonight and for the last 9 months. It's not an easy discussion to have. It's not even an easy decision to make. And the amount of conversation and consideration and the level of communication has been wonderful. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Jessica, and I want to thank Ben and team because you guys have gone back to the well many times when we've asked for information and updated it repeatedly, and I'm not sure that everybody knows how much work you guys have done behind the scenes to answer our questions or allow us to ask additional questions. So I want to thank you for your patience as well as my fellow board members for their consideration, and this is the hardest thing that we do as a board because it affects children. I just want to say, Mr. Yacklin, we do always look at educating our students. I know what you see is physical presence of what's being done related to the bond and some other things that enhance the experience of our community and our students. But I can assure you, this board looks at our students and makes them a priority at all times.
Just to quickly add, before we came into this meeting today, I paused and wrote down every general piece of data that we've looked at over the past 9 months related to gains, because I saw a comment on social media about how we weren't looking at data or information. And I won't necessarily read it all, but it's 15 to 20 different bullet points that would have probably 15 to 20 sub-bullet points underneath of it. Everything from enrollment numbers, class sizes, bus routes, other size schools, census data, population data, test score data, comments and perspectives from all the communities, 2 town halls, budget data, and the list goes on and on. So I guess I just I'm proud of this board for really taking this seriously. I don't know if I voted the right way today, but we'll see what a year brings, truthfully. But I feel good about the process, so I just wanted to say that.
I spent at least 6 hours today reviewing, contemplating, praying that we come up with a right resolution today. And through it all, one thing I want to say, Ben, you were extremely helpful with your matrix, because it was nice to see how that, played out, and I could work that through my head and how it just made it very easy. So thank you for creating that roadmap for all of us.
Sure, thank you.
And your work has only just begun with regard to expanding early childhood.
Yes.
So, thanks for asking for more work.
No, that's good. It's exciting.
Can I piggyback on Brian's comment? I ditto that. I appreciate feedback from fellow board members. I sincerely appreciate the work from the central office, the information that we wanted. I also want to thank the community for all the communication, the questions, the passion, the everything behind that. And then lastly, I would like to actually recognize Mr. Sayer. Even in the fantastic matrices that we were provided, your suggestion was even above and beyond that. And that's a testament to your dedication to it, but as well, I think I just want to set the stage that it is a conversation that we have to consistently keep having, and not even necessarily just as it relates to Gaines, but just the district as a whole. What can we do? How can we make things different? How can we improve across the board? And how can we help our students the best? So I just applaud everybody across the table. We don't always see eye to eye, but I apologize if I cut you off a couple times tonight, Jack. But it is a mutual respect. Again, I think we just all have, the best interests of the entire district at heart, and I can be confident upholding your decision. So thank you.
All right, anyone else? If not, we have the need to go into closed session for the purposes of negotiation per OMA 15.268, Section 8, A and E.
Oh, sorry, so moved.
Thank you. Support? Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? If not, I need a roll call, please, Sue.
Alyssa?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Alicia?
Yes.
Jessica? Brian?
Yes.
And Jack?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right,
Yes.
thanks.